Hi. Hey, how's it going? I'm about to lift weights. We're going to a convention. I'm getting energized. I'm gonna lift weights and go to a convention. My panel starts in 35 minutes. I'm filming this live. We're going to a convention. Mysticon. I'm a guest there, guest filmmaker, guest actor. And I'm also a musician, obviously. We'll be talking about some of my films there. And I am gonna lift some weights and get psyched up. I'm gonna do some bench press of 200 pounds, like with dumbbells right now. And I'm just gonna get psyched up and do some weights. Going to Mysticon. These are 100-pound dumbbells. Here goes. See what I mean? I'm gonna do some of these. I warmed up already. Yeah, going to Mysticon. I just weighed 400 pounds carrying those. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're going to Mysticon. Mysticon, I'm gonna speak on a panel pretty soon there. Yeah. Yeah, somebody's watching, I'm getting in shape. Protein, fruits, and vegetables. You can eat as many as you feel like. Fats in moderation. No garbagey carbs, no processed carbs, no added sugar. You keep getting in better shape. I've lost almost 20 pounds of fat in 1 month. We're going to Mysticon. Yeah, we're going to Mysticon. I'm gonna do some curls. I'm doing my arms, getting psyched up. Al's downstairs. Al's downstairs. I tried some creatine monohydrate this morning. I usually never use supplements, but I did some creatine monohydrate. I'm gonna be pouring it into this so I can keep my muscles like filled with actually what it does is creatine. It creates creatine phosphate in the body, which fuels adenosine triphosphate, which is the building block for all muscle, for the muscle fibers and muscle tissue that builds the muscle fibers, muscle cells, makes them stronger, helps water get to them better. And creatine, I haven't done this in a year or two, and I'm trying it. I'm just using it to get cool looking. So I go in the convention, I'm like, hey, I'm cool, I'm really strong or something. And so so I'm doing this, I'm getting psyched up so I can be like, yeah, they think I'm some cool actor. Maybe I'm not good enough looking for that to be enough on its own. I'm drinking water right now. Going to the convention. Al's downstairs. This is gonna be filming all day. Yeah. Going to the convention. I'm speaking on a panel, probably just over 30 minutes, 20 to 40 minutes, somewhere around there. You're gonna see it. We're taking the camera in the car. Maybe I should drink more caffeine. Think I'll look good enough for the thing yet with these weights? I'm getting as good looking as I can for the convention. I'm gonna get way better than this. I found the key to weight loss. You can eat as much protein as you feel like, as many fruits and vegetables. Very low on carbs, no added sugar or very little added sugar. I've lost 15 or 20 pounds of fat in a month. Gained muscle. It's amazing. I'm never hungry. I can eat as much as I feel like. When you think that you want bread or some other thing and you're so hungry for it, all you do is go right to this, nuts, or something easier to eat, oatmeal, or chicken, or steak, or eggs, or any protein, and you just lose weight and get in shape. And fruits and vegetables, of course. Okay, it is 8:36. Come on, I gotta do better than that. This is all natural. My biceps aren't that big. I'm gonna do something for biceps. I think that was 8:36. My panel starts in 24 minutes. Or something like that. I gotta be there soon. I better go. Just getting as buff as I can look, because I have the resume. I want to look as cool as I can. It makes me feel happy. All right. Move that out of the way. £100 dumbbells. Hellish thing that it does to people's bodies. Diabetes. Okay, it's bad. Okay, why am I talking about this when I have 21 minutes to get to the convention? Let's go. I gotta get my 21 minutes of getting my stuff together. Okay, where's my sweatshirt? Where's my sweatshirt? Sweatshirt. I'm not wearing this sweatshirt. There's one in the car. I'm turning all the heat off. We're leaving. Sorry for being a jerk and saying the F word. I don't care about being mean. I'm being nice. Come on. My imaginary family that's in Texas. Come on, let's go. Let's have a good time. Yay. Okay. No, I'm not crazy. I'm actually being comedic, funny. I'm trying to. That's my well, I don't do anything wrong. So I don't need some alibi with those crazy ass people that do things wrong against the law. Ugh. Don't ever break the law. You can't tell what my arm looks like because it's... Okay, Al started the car. I'm in the dark, literally, not figuratively. I'm gonna get some water. I'm filling up my jug of water. Al's honking the horn. We are going to the convention. Oh, he had the keys all along, I believe. Once he's in his car. I don't know where he is. I'm filling up my jug of water. We're going to the convention. Yay. I'm good enough as I am now. Is what they tell you. Terry, somebody or another, some famous person says, just be happy with content how you are now. Happy with how you are now, be content. And then go after the things that you really want. And that'll help you get all the things that you wish. Just be happy in the moment. Be happy in the moment. Whoa, that was full of water. I'm gonna put a little bit of creatine in it. Just a little bit of creatine so I can do push-ups and get really buff in between and look cool and strong. I have a sweatshirt in the car, like Burt Reynolds in Deliverance, keeping the weights in his boat hidden. Oh, I'm adding a bunch of creatine. I don't want to add too much of this. Put this creatine in it, in my water. Looks like creatine. Okay. Wipe it up here. We're going. He's in the car. I gotta get out of here. I gotta bring my water. I'm getting my stuff from my. Okay. I gotta pee, but I don't know how I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna get the camera. Let's go. Okay. Got my water. Putting it right here with my stuff. Here's my guest pass. My stuff. I'm holding it in my hand. I wrote some nuts and stuff. Oh, here's the keys. Okay. Let's get out of here. Make sure this door's locked. I don't want anybody to take. They wouldn't take anything out of here. They don't do that type of stuff. And I'm locking it just in case. Whoa. Gotta lock that. I'm getting out of here. What is this? A heat thing on? We don't need that. Turn it off. Let's get out of here. Nothing's ever gonna blow. It's gonna be here for 100 years. What's that sound? Nothing on. Okay. Leave the light on in the bathroom. Open this. Oh, gonna paint that floor. Okay, I'm out of here. I think he's outside. I gotta go to the thing quick. Hey, Jane, I barely saw. I didn't see what she could see. My guest passed. Excuse me. Ow! It's filming.
Yeah.
Hi. Here, you gonna film?
Yeah, let me put the thing on here.
Yeah, I changed.
Let's go a little slower.
You can put the phone
here. I'm leaning my hand on my knee, so I'm good.
Just filming. Well, iPhone doesn't. It's not like holding those big cameras. Some guy was supposed to. I'm not angry at him. Some guy was supposed to show up today, and I got him a guest pass.
Right.
And he was gonna film me all day today. And he blocked me on Instagram after I bought him a guest pass. So I'm gonna try to switch his pass over to my friend Corey or somebody else, or just forget about the whole pass since you're here. You're my closest friend. Right here, you gotta go really slow.
Really slow.
Could you want to not film the road?
Okay.
Hey, how's it going? Do you feel like switching on yourself, or you don't?
I'm good.
They might want to hear what you have to say.
I'm waking up.
driving the car
Good man.
and acting and told me to operate the camera and stuff like that. And I have to give a panel a speech as soon as I get there.
And what are you speaking about?
Less than 20 minutes probably.
Yeah.
I believe it's parallel storytelling. Yeah, parallel narrative storytelling.
What's parallel storytelling?
Parallel storytelling is when in a movie they have different storylines.
Oh, go slow, go slow, go slow.
With different characters.
Right.
Like, one example would be a soap opera. How they have some cool looking guy that's like a model, however old he is, with some woman that's like good looking, and they're like, hey, so, and he's like talking to her and stuff, and she's like, but Bill,
Would it be slow, go slow, go slow, go slow, go
and
slow.
there's that story going on.
This is Steve.
And then
This is Steve.
And then you see another storyline. Meanwhile,
Like Tarantino's movie, like
like Tarantino, Pulp Fiction, one of those
yeah.
horrific, negative imagery movies.
But he tells it from 5 different points of view.
Yeah, like where they have.
You want me to
literally
drive?
Killing people. And
You want me
stuff,
to
and
drive?
they market that to
You want me to drive?
No thanks.
Okay.
But it was it used to be one of my favorites.
Okay.
That Pulp Fiction when I was growing up. I don't watch it as much now.
It's definitely a classic, and also the guy.
When they have different storylines going on, that's what the first panel's about. See, you have one story between John Travolta and
everybody.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
And then that's going on, and then you cut.
There's a Bruce Willis character.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, you see the other storyline.
And then
going on. Those are the different
right.
parallel storylines going on simultaneously, but different.
And John Travolta dancing with the gangsters mall, and
yeah. Hey. Oh man. John Travolta, he's got a bald head now. He has like a beard.
He's getting old.
Yeah, he had a cool look, but he's.
Well, he's got it.
I don't know if he get too close to the guy. So, Marines.
Did he know Kevin Spacey?
Yeah. Hey,
Whatever you want.
If you want, you can film yourself, but I don't want to make you film yourself. Be a good time to talk about your own.
I'm just waking up here. Still a little blurry. Haven't had my first cup of coffee.
You haven't?
No, haven't had anything to eat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's okay.
Could have had a coffee. Or water.
I'm good. Slow down. Oh. There's Mr. Pogue.
Mr. Pogue?
Yeah, well, Bobby Pogue.
Oh my gosh.
Young Pogue, but he's not so young anymore. He's pushing my age.
That's amazing.
Yep. Mrs. Pogue is still alive. Now that's amazing. She's past 100.
Wow.
Yep.
Eating that healthy farm food.
lard and Crisco and
With the healthy stuff. Live that long. Maybe she eats light. Maybe she stays lighter.
I don't know what she eats. She was one of Inga's girlfriends. Mrs. Pogue and
Really?
yeah, and Mrs. Whatever her name is, the lady in the White House.
They liked Inga?
Yeah, well, there weren't too many old ladies up here, so they kind of hung out.
Cool.
Inga had a crew. She had a crew.
Cool.
She had a friend up on Poguefield Road. And this lady was a little older than Inga, but she was really short and somewhat frail. And I used to drive Inga over there because the road was kind of squirrely. And this lady would bake these great cinnamon biscuits. And we'd go over there and have coffee and cinnamon biscuits and sweet cream.
Wow.
At one time, and she was always in her day coat, you know, like her bathrobe, right? And she...
What are you filming?
me.
Oh, cool.
And she was... we were sitting there and they're telling stories. And the old lady said, "Oh, just excuse me." And she got up. She went over to a closet and got a gun that was taller than she was, right? And she went out to her back porch and leaned the gun on the porch and pulled the trigger. And she nearly blew the head off of a big deer.
Whoa.
Right? Then she went, put the gun down, went over the phone and called up her son. Larry, come over here. I just got a 10-point. I need you to dress it. And so 10, 15, 20 minutes went by. And said, "Larry, give Inga a couple of steaks." And so Inga had a bunch of steaks and ribs. And we went back and Inga cooked up the steaks. And that's the end of the story.
Wow.
Yep.
Inga's the lady here.
She started the whole ball of wax. It's, as strange as he is. Those first few moments of life are
Whoa.
important. Usually kind of tell the story. Tell the story. Like me, I was born dead. My mom's umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck.
Oh no.
And the moron doctors were trying to
That's terrible.
pull me out of my mom's uterus
Maybe Rowan was
with
like that. I think
the
Rowan was like that.
with the salad
My son.
tongs.
Mm.
And if it wasn't for Dr. Teresa, you gonna turn here?
No.
You're not gonna turn here?
No. Going straight, going the back way.
The back way.
Yeah.
This would be fun. I never knew the back way.
Yeah.
And Dr. Teresa pushed the men out of the way and put me back in my mom's uterus, turned me around and unfurled the umbilical cord from my neck. Because these guys, I still have scars on my neck from that. They were about to pop my head off like a tick.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the first few moments of my life. And Dr. Teresa would have ended up in the back lanes of Approximately.
Yeah. Well, you want to film me?
Oh, sure.
You just turn it.
Yeah. Here you
No,
go.
keep it like it was, didn't they?
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. Could you do a wider angle lens? Like you could film both at the same time.
Like this?
The two shot, like you had it, just further back, so you can see it. We can both see it.
Alright.
Hey. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to the convention. We're almost there.
Almost.
I'd say
Almost.
we'll be there, what, 10 minutes or so? You know what time it is now?
I have no idea.
If we could interact with them, if we could hear their voices, that'd be cool.
We'll be there soon.
If you had it turned the other way, you could see what they're saying.
Who's they?
The people watching the video right now.
It's on a live chat?
Yeah, it's on a live chat.
How does it do that?
It's a live chat.
Okay.
That video right there.
Doesn't have to be hooked up to...
No, doesn't need the internet cellular service. Can you switch it back so you can see the screen?
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? I'm driving now. Can you switch it back so you can, like, both of us can see the screen?
Oh, you mean like that?
Yeah, shouldn't both of us the
Shouldn't
screen?
you be keeping your eyes on the road?
Yeah, but here and there in a car, you're allowed to glance over at certain things.
Oh, no one's...
That's why there's a radio in the car.
No one's chatting.
Hey. Hi. Yeah. Yeah. Wait. How's it going there? Hey. Yeah. Holy mackerel.
Holy mackerel, mama.
Going to the convention.
Yeah.
5 people watching. Going to the convention. Almost there.
It looks like that your arm is my arm, John.
What do you mean?
See how...
No, it doesn't. No.
Yeah, that's my big arm. I've been working out. Pumping iron.
I've been working out increasingly every day for a couple months.
See, I'm driving the car from this side of the car. John's working the pedals, and I got my arm on the steering wheel, and I'm not even looking at the road. I'm looking at you. I'm driving psychically. Here we go.
I'm just making sure to drive safe.
Yeah, drive safe. Drive safe. That's what I say. Drive safe. Always drive safe.
Wonder how many people are going to be at the panel.
I don't know.
I wonder what time it actually is.
I don't know. I was ready about 10 minutes after you woke me up. I just put my pants on. I was ready at 10 minutes past 8.
Yeah.
Ooh, a lot of cars.
Yeah, there should be plenty of spaces because it's so early in the morning. I doubt people are going to get here this way early, other than it's a huge day and there'll be tons and tons of people. But still, this early should be just enough.
I don't know.
There's no parking. I'm going to see if there's... Hey, man. Let's see what this guy's doing. Film.
Yeah.
This lot is full, but you're welcome to park any building of your property.
Okay, here, let me...
Oh, man.
I'm getting out of the car. I'll be waiting.
You're going to drive?
No, I'm going to get out of the car. I don't want to walk in the rain.
What are you talking about?
I'm getting out of the car.
I have a panel to do. Can you park the car and walk over? Oh, wait.
You going to pay me for
Oh, wait.
that?
Oh, you're getting out. You're getting out because you have to walk. Oh.
I'll do that.
Oh, no, that's okay. Wait. What are you doing with this thing? Okay. Where's your parking?
Any building of yours.
How about right there?
Is there anything here?
How about behind that car?
Only like 2 spots left for hotel guests.
I'm a guest at convention.
Like if you are staying at the hotel.
Hey, what about right there, buddy? Can we
You
park
can park right, but I don't think it will fit. Let's try.
Okay,
Okay,
park
okay.
right there.
Thank you.
Park right there.
Thank
Right
you.
there. Right there.
Cool.
Right there.
Oh,
Right
yeah.
there. Right
Okay,
there,
got it.
Right here. Right
Cool.
here. Right here. Right here.
Okay.
Don't hit the thing.
Whoa. Oh, no.
Keep going.
Oh,
Keep going.
gosh.
Go up a little bit.
Wait,
Right in the middle of this. Right in the middle of this.
Wait.
Just go up a little bit more.
Oh.
More. Good.
Wait.
Right there.
Oh,
right
yeah,
there.
good.
Stop.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks, man. Thank you, you guys. All right. Could you operate the camera? Hey, how's it going? He took off. He's walking to the convention when I've got to give a speech on a panel. I'm just gonna go. Let's do this. Hope there's nothing valuable in here. I'm putting my tripod together. I'm gonna put this camera on. Putting it on here. Hi. Hey, how's it going? Putting this thing together. It doesn't look like there's anything. Creatine. My creatine drink that I mixed this morning. Okay, let's go. Whoa. Ah! Let's go. Oh man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Hey everybody, going to the convention. Whoa. Oh gosh. See if I can go in this way. Here's the door to get in. Whoa. All right.
This is more traditional Sherlock stuff he's in. And then
Indie
this
film
one's more like,
panel.
do you want this torch with Sherlock on it?
Boardroom
Type
2.
stories are basically, they're out of the ordinary.
You ain't going nowhere.
It's Boogie.
Hey, brother.
All right, yeah.
What's up, man?
The Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant.
You know, yeah.
All right. Hi. Hello. Hi. Do you know where Boardroom 2 is? I guess it's down here. Boardroom. Ooh. All right, cool, man.
So we get that parallel thing going back and forth. So it's a great example of really what non-traditional narratives can be for a film. So does anybody want to add a little more about Highlander?
Yes, what Highlander did really well in regards to parallel structure is when you go to a flashback sequence, when you're in the B story of the whole narrative, it changes tone. There is, I mean, you can tell that the tone has changed without the placard that, hey, we're now in Scotland 300 years prior. We're now at a different fight in his life. We can get past that because they changed the tone. Simple things is your color scheme, color correction, color palette, and wow, that's like all first year high school. You can tell the audience it's subliminally force feeding. Hey, we're at a different point, and if you do it real well, it's unnoticeable. If you don't do it real well, it's jarring and it takes you out, and you have those snapbacks. Not a flashback; it's more abrupt, and it does take some experimentation and empirical learning.
100%. Highlander works because of how it was shot.
Right, and I agree with that, because I think in the hands of somebody else that really didn't have a lot of those people were new at it, but one thing they did have was the, passion to tell the story properly, and I think that passion sort of fell away when they did Highlander 2. I think it was just like, we're going to make money off this.
Russell McKay was a music video director.
Mm-hmm.
He was Michael Bay. He did some good stuff. Razorback's the best giant pig movie ever made.
Okay. Well,
It's a small genre, but you know, it's the best
Have you
of that
seen
tiny
Pig
genre.
Woman?
Okay, so maybe there's
Pig Girl? Pig Woman. Pig Girl?
Oh, Pig Woman's in production right now.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But yes, it's the same team that brought us
Oh.
Pig Girl.
Oh.
And Pig Girl is here.
Wow.
Yes.
Well,
Pig Girl. Oh, my gosh.
So we've had another panelist join us. If you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Oh, I'm John Birmingham. Hi, everybody. I'm actually filming my camera friend guy that was here. I don't know where he is. I'm John Birmingham. I've been working on movies since I was a little kid, like in I think the 90s, 1990s, something like that. At home, just teaching it to myself in Roanoke on 2 VCRs in 1990, which was a long time ago. And then since then, I've done feature films. I've either directed or directed or played the lead in films with Ed Asner, Pauly Shore, Pauly Shore, all sorts of ones.
That's
even
a wide range. Pauly Shore, Ed Asner.
Yeah. Brandon DiCamillo from MTV's Viva La Bam. I used to like Viva La Bam a lot, so I got Brandon DiCamillo in a thing, and I paid him. Filmed around Philadelphia, where he was in Westchester with Bam Margera and stuff. But I didn't film with Bam Margera. He wanted back then $10,000. And I just got the other guys in the movie. And besides getting famous people and stuff, which they say you're supposed to do, I've studied film for a long time. I went to one of the best film schools, Chapman University. I went to LMU. Before that, I got my MFA from Chapman University. Been doing it for a long time, a really long time, like 30 years or something. And I'm an actor too, not just a filmmaker. So that's a little different. At first, I couldn't physically make the whole movie and produce the whole thing, and then all of a sudden be in front of camera. But then I got to where I could figure out how to do it. Yeah.
All right, well, welcome. All right, now the next one is going to be you'll probably consider an out of left field choice, but I was thinking about this. I was like, I'm just going to throw it out just for the heck of it. Princess Bride. If you haven't seen The Princess Bride, where have you been all your life? Where have you been all your life? This is like one of the greatest movies of all time. It's comedy, drama, but the reason I put it up here is a parallel structure film, because if you really think about it, it really is, because you have two stories going on. You have the story, of course, the main story of Buttercup and Wesley, their trials, tribulations, and this great story of Twoo Love. That just, is one of the, and of course has some of the greatest quotes of all time. You can almost quote the whole movie at one point. I've almost done it before too, that's how bad it is. But then of course, occasionally in discussing the parallel structure story, you'll all of a sudden cut back to another story, which is the grandfather telling the grandson, reading the story to the sick grandson of his. And it kind of cuts back and forth, and you won't expect the cuts. If you see this movie the first time, you'll be just like, "Whoa, we're back in the bedroom." So, it's just this idea that it cuts, that it cuts back and forth several times, but it's never, it's a little jarring, but at the same time, it's almost like you're with the grandson story for the first time, and you're getting to hear his reactions, which is amazing. Like, oh, kissing again. We have to deal with the kissing stuff, And then it's like, when Wesley, it looks like the hero is dead, he's like, no, he can't be dead. What? Jesus, Grandpa, where are you reading this stuff to me? So, so it cuts back and forth, but it never gets confusing. It's almost like they knew how to do it brilliantly. And I wanted to show, and of course I'm going to talk about this one just because, again, it's one of the greatest, it's in my top 5 movies of all time. So, of course, anybody want to add some more?
I would actually. I always felt the whole callbacks to the grandfather reading the story. I always felt that was like kind of an editing and a pacing choice, because the Princess Bride, when you watch the film, is almost like episodic in the sense that you have, or like a multi-act play, and like at the end of each act, they're going to call back to the storytelling to in essence give the audience, who I guess the audience maybe is the eyes of the child who read the story, and so like we get to recap and here's a question you might have about it. Like let's give you a moment to like process the whole act that you just saw, and then we'll go back into the story and we'll dig deeper, and then we'll give you a moment to process what you just saw.
That's an excellent point, and I hadn't considered that one of the advantages of parallel storytelling is to avoid something I see more and more when I watch some of what I thought were some of my old favorite movies, how terrible the transitions are.
Yeah.
That and doing something like this totally takes away the need to explain how they get from point A to point B, which is always boring and uninteresting, and you go to something else, and then when you get back to the main story, they're at point B. We don't need to see them traveling, doing a montage or any of that other nonsense.
And what I've found when there's an adaptation movie, that there's a book that the Harry Potters are infamous from this, Princess Bride because it's based on a book, even Groundhog Day. Your transitions, when you're writers, they cannot write the whole 300, 400, 500 pages of this tome in one alcoholic binge session. They sit down and they write their chapters 1 or 2 nights at a time till they get their story out. And it may take a month, it may take 2 years. But because of that, this story, if you transfer it into a screenplay and we put it on camera, you're gonna get those blocks, those scenes that are blocks that are just based on this chapter alone. And when that happens, because in the book you just see chapter 5, and your character starts doing something else because it's the end of the chapter, and when you were done reading the first 4 chapters that night before you fell asleep, that told you the part that you could go to fall asleep on, and then you pick up at chapter 5, and it really doesn't matter because over the night and the rest of your day, work and everything else, your chapter 5 starts off and you're continuing your book for your enjoyment reading. When you transfer that to film, you get a cutaway, it fades to black, you open the scene at another location, and sometimes it's jarring, sometimes they try to bleed it into you, sometimes it's the heartbeat music, depending on their tone and depending on genre. And if it's done well, it's great. If it's done poorly, it snaps and it flashes. Depending on how you do it, you could add tension if it's a suspense film. If it's done right, and those things is because you have those options, and if you've studied and practiced and experimented, you will figure out that these things can be done if you allow them to happen. A lot of that happens in the editing room, sadly. And here in the South, hey, I need you to edit my film. I'll hit back with you in 6 months, and you don't know what you're going to end up with, other than hey, you're out 10 grand, and now you got this footage of a film that you shot that's all inverted, reversed, and negated, and it's craziness. And that's where if you master editing, you can pull in those moments and get rid of those abrupt, bad transitions. Including a parallel story is a perfect venue for this if you do it right. And this is one of those few that does.
And I think what this discussion is reminding me of too is how, for parallel story structure to be done well, like you're saying, to be effective, like it's very deliberate in the writing of the story. So a lot of it can be in the editing, but then, I'm thinking of examples maybe like Lars von Trier films, like something like Nymphomaniac, and I haven't seen the new one he did, The House That Jack Built, but I heard that the structure is the same, where you have something going on, you basically have, a character telling another character a story, or like this, 2 people are talking about one person's entire life. You're intercutting between the conversation of the story being told and then the actual depiction of what's going on. And so when you're writing it, you're making deliberate choices about, okay, well, after this event happens in this story, like we want to cut to see what these characters are going to talk about, So it can be it's very deliberate in the writing, I think, oftentimes.
All right, well, now one of the filmmakers who usually does do kind of these kind of parallel structure films, but in a very unique way for the most part, is Oliver Stone. I'm certainly seen all or most of his movies. If you watch just a few of his movies, you'll notice that he kind of does it in a very unique way. So, but the one Oliver Stone movie I wanted to pull out, this is going to be a controversial choice. I'm going to be honest. Go ahead, JD. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not at there yet.
Definitely controversial. Oh my God.
Okay, I forgot. I put this one in this morning. But anyway, we'll talk about holes a little bit. This is the only. This is the second family movie in here, and I just saw this movie recently when I was subbing with a school, and I'd forgotten that it kind of followed this really nonlinear structure where you had, the story of the kids, of course, digging these holes, but they would, of course, there are a couple of times where it follows the nonlinear narrative where it kind of flashes back.
That's the movie starring those like little boys that Steven Spielberg produced.
I can't remember if Spielberg produced this one or not, but yeah, basically it's a movie about this. These kids are sent to it's kind of like what would you call it, a juvenile hall sort of place, but it's out in the desert.
I never saw it, and it has a real parallel storyline.
It does have a parallel story, but because they start doing flashbacks telling the story of why they're out there looking for this, digging holes, because apparently there's this treasure out here. And occasionally it'll just cut back to that part of the story where you're learning more about how this treasure came out there, and just and you'll all of a sudden be following this one story after they've done a traditional flashback, but now we're getting non-traditional flashbacks where the story keeps unfolding as the main story is being told. So this was another out of left field one. I don't know if anybody.
No, this is actually a great one. It utilizes object identification transitions where the shovel, you're following the shovels into the dirt, and that's the trigger that pulls you in and out of the flashbacks. The camera following the shovel going into the dirt and coming back out, that is the cue that the team settled on. They're like, hey, this is where we're gonna put in, and it's blended a lot more seamlessly, because when you're digging, the shovel is your primary tool. These kids have shovels. The treasure hunters who buried the treasure in the Old West, they have the shovels putting it in, and that's what links the two stories together. And as long as the camera keeps our eye following that shovel, we follow along with the story.
Okay, now now going back to what I was saying about Oliver Stone, this is going to be kind of an out of left field kind of one that's controversial because
it has Val Kilmer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is a movie actually that really, this was the linchpin for me wanting to discuss this, because this movie has been through the ringer several times, even by Stone himself. When they wrote the script for Alexander, they actually wrote it as this parallel structure story, because Oliver Stone explained that this one's a 5-act film. Doesn't follow the three-act structure, but he said it was 5 acts. But he said once you get into act 3 or 4 with a traditional narrative, you get exhausted by the time you get to the big battles at the end of the movie. So he and the writers rewrote this as a parallel structure film. Now when the film is released originally, it's actually re-edited to follow more of the linear narrative. Now I've gone back and watched it a couple of times after I've watched more recent cuts of the film. And you can tell it was not meant to be this linear narrative at all. That there's actually one moment towards the end of the movie in the theatrical version where they do go back and do a flashback scene. It's like, wow, where did this come out of? But then, after that was released, and of course it got creamed by critics, and it's still considered one of Oliver Stone's most controversial and lesser movies. It's a favorite of mine, but I've read the story of this film. So I followed it for a while. He has re-edited that film 3 times since it was released, and he's brought it back to the more non-linear parallel structure film. If you want to go to the next slide, this is the only one I have 2 slides for the same film. This is his third cut of the film, Alexander Revisited. To me, this is the definitive version. It's 3.5 hours long, but one of the things that's great about this movie is he does return it to the full parallel structure. It actually begins with the Battle of Gaugamela, which is considered the high point of Alexander the Great's life and his leadership. And from there, it will, through the rest of the movie, it will go back and forth between his fall from grace as he's mentally unraveling and dealing with all these people trying to usurp his power. And then it will kind of cut back at certain moments. Again, it doesn't actually trigger flashbacks, but there will actually be a moment where they'll be talking or thinking about something. Then all of a sudden, without really triggering the flashback, you will be back in time seeing his early days and how he became the king of Greece at the time. So, you know, it's very unique that they, you know, when you go back and see the original theatrical cut, and then you go watch either his second cut, the director's cut, and this final cut, just really see that it was really meant to be this parallel structure film, and it works so much, in my opinion, it works so much better in that way. So, has anybody on the panel seen this one? Do you want to add
Actually, no, I want to see this.
Yeah, this version, yeah, it's...
You prefer this version?
I prefer this version. They actually did a fourth cut called the Ultimate Cut. It's good, but they take out a couple of scenes that I thought really helped the movie. There's like a great scene where they discuss the strategy of the Battle of Gaugamela. And so when you watch that scene and then the battle unfolds, you understand what's going on.
Right.
They cut that scene out. Now it's just like, what the heck's going on in the Battle of Gaugamela? So, but you know, so I would definitely, of the four versions out there, this is the go-to version for me, just because it really shows the parallel structure in a great way. So, anybody want to add?
Yeah, I haven't seen this film, but like what it makes me think about, like I know we're talking about film in general, but I think, you know, television has some of the most, you know, quintessential examples of like parallels. It's, you know, you have an A plot and a B plot in a sitcom. So when we're talking about things that are restructured and, you know, re-released, if they didn't work, I think about like Arrested Development, if anybody's seen that, where like the fourth season, when Netflix revived the show, instead of it being, you know, the A plot, B plot, they tried to do it as, okay, this 1 hour thing where you're basically following one of the family members for like a whole hour, and then, you know, it got controversial reception, and then recently they re-edited it and they kind of went back to the original A plot, B plot, parallel, or many plots, you know, parallel structure. So it's interesting how there are examples of things being re-edited if, you know, the reception isn't welcome.
Yeah.
Right. So we've looked at a couple, mostly films that work with the parallel structure storyline, but now not every film is that does this kind of parallel structure storyline is going to work properly. I mean, and sometimes in the hands of a great film, even a great filmmaker, it can't work. So next slide, JD. Flags of Our Fathers. This is one I want to look at just as a discussion on how not to do parallel structure, really. Has anybody seen the movie?
I've seen it. It's been a while.
Yeah, this was a Clint Eastwood movie. Now, I don't consider it a bad movie. It is a pretty good movie, but the biggest problem is it was actually written as a kind of parallel structure movie. But it's done in such a way that is so confusing at times that if you had not read the book, or if you did not know the story behind the photograph, you would be like, what is going on? So, because they kind of do it, and they do it in a way that really is jarring. That really, it almost takes you out of the main story. Like, they'll be showing, like there's this great scene where the battle of the landing of Iwo Jima is done very well, and then all of a sudden there's like a cut, and all of a sudden you're on a ship with two of the characters talking, and this is long after the battle of Iwo Jima has happened, and they're already talking about doing this, getting all these people from this photograph together to do a bond raising, a bond sales tour, and it's just, and then throughout the movie you'll have it cut back and forth, and at some points they just overuse it. There's like this great scene where there's supposed to be a great scene where they're actually restaging the flag raising, and they use this whole thing to kind of, in my opinion, kill off major characters that really never got developed. This should have been a 3-hour movie. It was like 2 hours and 12 minutes. It was just like shoehorned in. So this is just a film, I think they had a good idea of doing the parallel structure so you could tell the Battle of Iwo Jima kind of parallel to the story of them doing this Bonds tour, which takes up in the book about a third of the book. So, you know, it was a good idea, but it was just not effectively done in the editing, and it's probably a weakness of the script as well. I mean, Paul Haggis wrote the script, and he's a great screenwriter, but I think his ideas and the editing just didn't merge properly. But anybody else want to add anything about the film? Or I mean, it's worth seeing.
It started Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood directed. He actually did two movies. He did two movies roughly about at the same time about the Battle of Iwo Jima. This one was the American perspective, and it's based on John Bradley's phenomenal book about the flag raisers. He also did one called Letters from Iwo Jima, which looked at it from the Japanese perspective. That's actually the superior movie. He kind of uses the flashbacks in that movie too, but it's more of the traditional character sees something, it reminds them of what, and they flash back originally. So, but this one they tried to do more of the parallel structure, and it just wasn't effective. I mean, fortunately, there's some great performances in this movie, and some good scenes, so it keeps it from being a total disaster. But yeah, this is one that's kind of like hard to follow if you hadn't read the books. Actually, the funniest story was I was working with some people when this movie came out, and a buddy of mine, Dave, comes up to me and is like, "Steve, did you see the movie Flags of Our Fathers?" I was like, "Yeah, saw it." He's like, "I've never been so confused in all my life." So I knew then that this was not an effective way of doing the story. But so for the last film we're going to discuss, this is a more recent movie. Of course, Chris Nolan. We got to talk about him a little bit because a lot of his movies actually follow this non-linear narrative. Like Memento was something that didn't follow a traditional structure. This one, and of course, Inception was one that towards the end you really saw the effectiveness of this parallel structure as they go dream within dream within dream, and they cut back and forth between the dreams. That works well, but to me, this one is really I think really exemplifies his work with parallel structure. Now, as Trent was discussing earlier, this one does follow 3 separate stories that take place over a different amount of time. So you have the mole, which is the spot on the land at Dunkirk where the soldiers are trying to get off. That takes place over the course of a week. Then you have the story of the sea, where these people who are actually civilians that are told by the British Navy that you have to go out and get these men off of Dunkirk Island with these small boats. And they follow one of the characters, one of the people who did that, and that takes place over the course of the day. And then, of course, because I'm just partial to aircraft and airplanes, and especially Spitfires, my favorite part was the air, where they follow 2 of the pilots who take part in the protection of the Dunkirk evacuators. And that takes place over the course of an hour. Now, what Nolan did with it was he cut between the 3 stories back and forth. When it starts off, you don't really realize that's what he's doing. You're just like following the story, and all of a sudden you're starting to see, oh, there's something a little different about this, because it's day in this one scene and it's night in this one other scene. But then you start seeing characters who have appeared in another part of the story in a different manner, and you're like, oh, he's not following this traditional structure. So but the movie continues to progress in that way towards a conclusion where all 3 stories will meet at the end of the film. But he does it so brilliantly. I've watched this movie probably a dozen times since it's come out. I just marvel at what Nolan has been able to do with not just this movie, but all the movies he's done. But this one was a great one to do. And of course, I went to see it with my dad. My dad came out of the theater and said, "That's the best World War II movie I've ever seen." I'm like, really?
It's regarded as commonly one of the better war movies that's come out.
It really is. It really is. So go ahead. Comments? I had to use this. I love David Pumpkins, so I guess we'll go ahead and I'll leave if anybody on the panel would like to discuss other films that we didn't discuss in terms of parallel structure movies. If you all have an example, what you think exemplifies parallel structure in film, and then of course after that we'll open it up to questions from our audience.
Well, I think while you're on the subject of Nolan, I think he's kind of like the filmmaker to really talk about it. That's great that you had that as the example. I think if you're really to maybe expand the lens with which you view this discussion, like Nolan's interesting because almost all of his films, maybe with the exception of the Dark Knight trilogy, is in some way, I think, about the separation of like space and time, or the blurring of reality, the fracturing of those kind of things. Like whether either he uses a deliberate nonlinear structure like something like Dunkirk or Memento, but then he might also be interested in those kind of themes within the plot of his films. Like The Prestige is all about like doppelgangers and cloning and whatnot, and then Inception is about going within the dream world and the subconscious, and Interstellar is about like wormholes and time travel. So he's really fascinating, and definitely like parallel structure with just that larger interest in blurring reality, because that's really what parallel structure is. It's like in the editing, it's like you're deliberately manipulating how space and time are working. So you're shattering reality, I guess you could say, and kind of reconfiguring it. So he's always been really interested in that in one way or another.
I guess my favorite filmmaker who uses this a lot is Tarantino. Pulp Fiction.
Damn it.
Pulp Fiction is the movie that made people, realize there was such a thing, like they had never noticed it before. And even something that at first I thought it was more straightforward, but really Inglourious Bastards, same thing. We have the story of Shoshana and the story of the bastards, and they're both working toward the same ends, but completely unaware of each other, and it all comes together at the end.
Kill Bill as well.
Oh yeah,
Kill Bill was
yeah,
entirely,
exactly.
it was entirely a flashback and a series of multiple different flashbacks.
He's probably really well known, or maybe the best known for those parallel storylines going on, like in Pulp Fiction. I was just talking about that earlier. How they have whatever those characters' names are, the Jules or whatever his name is, the John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson doing something, and then it cuts to another story of something going on, and then has these various people back and forth, the parallel stories going on at the same time.
It was partially Tarantino and with some other directors as well, but anybody ever see the movie Four Rooms?
Yeah,
Which
which
is
is
like
that's
told
written
in
by
the-
Tarantino.
Yeah, Tarantino was definitely involved. It was like each room in the hotel was something different, and more recently, Bad Times at the El Royale used that same storytelling method. That each room in the hotel complex was a different story.
You could even argue Death Proof is a parallel story, except it's not told, not the way most of these where we go back and forth. Half the movie tells a story, the second half tells the same story with some twists. So it's more satisfying, for the audience. But
It's funny you bring that up real quick because I think another thing interesting about parallel storytelling structures, sometimes audience reactions, they'll be like, I really love this character's story, but then I don't want to watch the whole film, over and over because I'm not that into this stuff. Like this bores me. Death Proof is kind of like that. I love the Kurt Russell sections, but like 2/3 or 3/4 of the movie doesn't have him in it, and I'm not that thrilled with the rest of the film.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions, or if you have any questions about anything you've heard, or if you have any questions about just parallel structure in general, if there's anything you'd like to know a little bit more, I'll go ahead and open up to questions.
say something, Paul.
Say something.
JD, he opened it up for questions.
Okay, you guys, I guess, when y'all look for your parallel to your story and your characters.
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I'm currently writing of course, I've just written what's hopefully going to be my first feature film, and it sort of follows a parallel structure storyline because it's actually begins and ends with. I won't give away the ending. It's kind of similar to what The Princess Bride was, but I'm not following that kind of story completely. A grandfather telling his grandson about his experiences in the Civil War, and of course the main story is the war itself and what the soldier is going through, his spiritual journey as he deals with a lot of death and destruction around him, and an ultimate decision that leads to men on both sides of the conflict being affected very deeply. And so that's going to be my first playing with the parallel structure. And I want to be a little gentle with it because I do plan to hopefully down the line do something very similar with it. So, but what about everybody on the panel? Are you playing with any parallel structure films or?
I think with me, I haven't yet written a parallel structured film within a conventional narrative, which is largely what we've been talking about. Most of the stuff that I work with would be like parallel structure within very short experimental films, one of which we'll be showing at the 6 o'clock block tonight called The Rehearsal. But I think with me, like one thing we didn't really touch upon is how sometimes, a reason that, that structure is effective is because it grips the audience like a lot quicker. Sometimes you can't, or maybe we did touch upon that, but to tell something very linearly, depending on the subject matter, sometimes you just have to like really, intercut between a lot of different stuff and get right into like the climax or the heart of the story because it's more interesting and you're less likely to lose the viewer's attention. So when I incorporate parallel structure, that's something that I think about is just how to make it less boring or, keep the audience like on their toes.
All right, well, I will open this up right now for shameless plugs. If anybody wants to promote their movies right quick before we close.
I just did mine.
Yep.
I'll talk about mine. I have a movie out now, Trauma Distributed, Rednecks. I have another movie. It's a feature film. That's a feature film I wrote, directed, starred in it. It's about 3 redneck brothers, and they go on this quest. And I'm trying to think if it has a parallel story structure, but I believe it's just pretty straightforward. It doesn't really cut from one narrative to another back and forth. It's generally just one story throughout the whole thing, but I'm sure there must be some sort of parallel structure in there because I spent months writing it and rewriting it. So I'm sure it has so many layers that there must be some way that it has some parallel structure. And I also have Crazy Animal, which was originally titled One Nation Under God, and I had to change the title to Crazy Animal. And that one is also available through Trauma. It was the number 939 most popular movie on IMDb. That has some different stories going on. It cuts back to, it has a flashback to things that went on previously years ago, and so it has these different parallel stories going on that are developed and revealed throughout the story. And that one's available now. It's in stores. It was in stores pretty much everywhere online. It was in Borders Books. It was in Borders Books physical locations. I have some. Plan 9. I co-produced Plan 9. It's the remake of Plan 9 from. Oh yeah, it's a remake of Plan 9 from Outer Space. I co-produced it.
That was a good movie.
I was one of the producers, but I just took the co-producer credit, and I'm an actor in it. I have like a bit role. I have a few speaking lines. They produced it here in Roanoke, and they stayed at my parents' houses for the cast and crew. These couple houses that my parents owned, they let them stay there, and they just produced the whole thing. He's my friend John Johnson, and that was out in Walmart, in most Walmart stores, physical stores, and all over Netflix and everything. I have another movie. It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon Prime, I believe. It was on Netflix. That's also Crazy Animal, and Vampires in Zanzibar is another one that I have, and all sorts. That's available on YouTube for free now. If anyone else wants to talk about their movies, I'm sure there are other movies that I've acted in and stuff they're being released now and stuff. But I've mostly been doing YouTube. Found that YouTube makes more money. I couldn't figure out how to make as much money from the movies, but I've worked on it for like 10 or 15 or 20 years of movie stuff. So.
4 o'clock in this very room, Blood of the Mummy. Our feature film will be making its Virginia debut. It's world premiere. You'll find out if Tom Gore has guts, and you'll find out if I can swallow a lot of blood. Yes to both.
And you have one that Belladonna.
Oh, Belladonna,
right?
yes, Belladonna. That's at 6 o'clock. Will be one of the. That's about a 27-minute movie that I wrote that. Brett Nolan made that movie. So good stuff going on. Dave's got something too.
At 11:30, there's The Sheep and the Wolf.
Oh, that's right.
That will be playing in here. You all should see. At 4 o'clock in this very room, Blood of the Mummy, which this guy dies horribly, and you should all see that and rewatch it over and over again. You should die off. And tomorrow in this very room at 12 noon, The Last in Line, a fantasy drama that I happily get to live through. Hint, hint.
What times are? What times
Hey,
are
you get to live in the Sheep and the Wolf too.
That is true. I do live at the 11:30 movie here in this very room, The Sheep and the Wolf.
You might wish you died, but
Yeah.
Hey, we all have our roles.
Oh, and of course, yes, and 7 p.m. tonight, I will be screening one of my earlier works, a short film that we recently remastered called Presence, a Metaphor. It's a kind of an art house horror flick. And then we'll be doing an early cut sneak peek of The Devil's Lettuce 2, which is a drug PSA to teach you kids to not do those evil, dirty devil's lettuce.
Well, I want to thank those of you who were able to make it out for coming. I hope you learned something, and if not, I hope you at least were entertained by us up here for about 50 minutes. So, thank y'all. We'll go ahead and
You were wonderful.
Let them get ready for the next one. But hope to see y'all 11:30 for our film showings.
You have your phone straight here?
Yeah, mine's at 6 o'clock. Oh, right after yours.
Oh,
Yeah. Mine's the last one.
Were you a last minute addition to all this? Because
I was. They played it because I'm on the website.
You read through my one couple songs I gave you away.
I'm
Are you drinking it?
Hey man, it's filming you live on a YouTube channel.
Hello, YouTube.
What's your
Watch
name?
my stuff. My name's Tom Gore. You can find me on Amazon Prime. Watch The Last Airbnb. They came from the ether and The Haunting of 4 Points. You just put me in your search bar and you will see. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
For your IMDb page.
You're a veteran of the Army stuff?
Yes, I was 20 Army veteran, was an Apache Longbow helicopter pilot, served in Iraq during the surge, in Afghanistan 3 times.
Wow, like Stanley Kubrick or something like that. That became a filmmaker.
That is a true statement.
I guess Clint Eastwood, was he in the Army? Or,
I am unsure.
I don't know.
I don't think was, but I know a few were. I know a few people that we talked about were. So
I thought he was. I wasn't sure or not. But okay, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're
man,
welcome.
and
Glad you're able to make it out.
We'll see you around.
Cool. Yeah. Later, man. Later.
Because if you're helping Johnny.
Oh, I got to do. Oh yeah, I got to do.
If you're helping
promotion.
Johnny, you're automatically.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cool. Later. I gotta do another panel.
I'll see you at 11:30.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh,
A
we're
little
doing
dog. Little dog. I gotta go. Cool.
We'll be back.
Yeah.
And doing that.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy. See, the best guitarist in Roanoke. Hey, buddy. Debatably.
Debatably, I agree with that.
Really good guitar. Really
That's
amazing.
better. Everything's better.
Hi, you're in a live video. Is that okay? Are you an actress?
No.
No. Oh.
No, I'm just cosplaying Dr. River Song.
Oh,
Eating my breakfast.
Cool. Okay. Bye, lady. I'm done.
Interstate bypasses around. Oh, yeah.
Here, man.
So then we would be able to get more space for them. And the idea was
Yeah. Hey.
how am I going to help you?
Hi, I'm looking for my panel thing.
I don't do that sort of thing. But the idea would be to put it like do it
Hey man, do you like being on camera or not? You can be? Yeah! You have any famous stuff? It's filming you live.
Be well.
Be well. Cool, you too. Later, Fred? Oh, Fred? Fred, yeah. Alright, later man. Oh man. Looking at my thing. Have you seen Room Dogwood 1?
Dogwood one would be.
I feel like it's downhill. It is? Okay, thanks. That's not Dogwood one? Okay. Alright. Yeah.
Down this way.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
Really good guitars. Not trying to, I gotta have a bordering thing or something. It is. Down there.
I think it's down.
It's not
Oh.
just it's not trying.
Oh, man. Hey.
Cover the wrong way. Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Hi.
Hello.
Hey. I'm doing a panel showing your films to YouTube audience.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean your books. I'm sorry, books. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like when like the professional.
I got 2 tins with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's me. And there with some people. Hey, man.
Like my friend over here has been showing me these beautiful images that she's got that she's using as the basis for her characters. If you have an artist who's done a book cover with the characters, or an artist who has, or writer who's described it, I'll try to help people to find the materials that actually function the way that it's described or the way that it's portrayed, so that they can actually bring that character.
I'm Matthew Pinnick. I run a theatrical design company called Ribbons and Rivets. Most of my time is spent making costumes for other people rather than myself. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Thought that I was doing blackface. It couldn't be further from the truth, but I hurt that person's feelings. I don't wear that costume anymore for that reason. I don't want to hurt somebody.
That's like the people that get a little confused about the drow when you cosplay.
Right, a drow elf is black.
Thanks for coming, guys. I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Oh, it's not easy with songs. Sorry, it might have been okay.
There's a couple of people that's kind of a
Others are like, yeah.
Later. Bye, Anita.
Bye! I need a hug. I need a hug from my buddy. Oh, give me some love.
Oh, hey, hi. Oh, man, I don't want to get too close.
What?
Mike could get angry, right?
No. Mike doesn't care where you get your haircut. I'm just gonna watch for supper.
That reminds me that of course
I gotta use the bathroom.
okay, well, don't fall in the hole.
Somebody I'm friends with, someone.
All right. Well, it's good
Yeah,
seeing
no.
you. You're looking absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I love the
Thanks.
shoulders. You have
Oh.
filled out so beautifully.
Cool, thanks, yeah.
All right, so
It's
nobody's
from
playing
no
this.
carbs and no added sugar.
I know.
Bye. Hey. Oh, man. Wait, what was that? Oh my gosh. Whoa, it's frightening. Oh, it was it. Hey, man. Hi. Hey.
Money. Like it was me basically pulling what I bought for the company clothing wise as uniforms.
Hey, man. I gotta use the bathroom. Hey, you want to talk to the camera? Tell them about guitar?
Can you guys send me
Or
You filming, man? You're filming a little bit of everything.
you want to talk to? It's a live video.
Oh, you're doing
You
live.
want to or not?
Yeah, man. I'll talk
You
on
do? It's an audience right there.
There's people right there.
Sometimes a lot more people are watching,
No,
sometimes
that's
not.
cool, man. You got
You
good
can tell
work.
them whatever you want. It's my
Absolutely
YouTube
cool.
channel.
Awesome. Is this on your YouTube?
Yeah,
Hey,
you
what's
can
up?
Talk about whatever you feel like.
Cool. All right, man. Hey, everybody. Hey, John's friends and family. John has to use the bathroom. So, Kenny, thank you. I will. Awesome. Thanks, brother. Awesome. I'll put it on here. All right. Hey, world. I'm on John Birmingham's feed right now, checking out things. So we're at Mysticon 2019. Look behind me. You have author Stuart Jaffe, one of my favorite authors of all time. Stuart, you want to come in and talk on this live feed for a minute, man?
We're live?
We're a live feed on YouTube, apparently. So, yeah, Kenny, this is Stuart. Stuart writes some really great books. We're on John Birmingham. I don't know if you know John Birmingham, the director. Rednecks, Lots of great stuff. He's got some good stuff on there. So, hey man, let's just find out a little bit about what's some book stuff happening in your world right now.
I have a new book coming out in 2 weeks for the 11th Max Porter book. Yeah, Southern Fury.
Ooh. I just got book 10 yesterday. I have the first 9, and we're waiting. You know, I got to wait. So I have to wait another week because he couldn't bring that one to me, even though he probably had the power to.
I don't even have it. I don't. I have to finish like putting it together so it actually exists as a physical thing.
That's okay though, because I've got plenty. I've got like 18 other books to read now, so it's I've got plenty of time before I get to book 11. But it'll be good. So, what's some other series you got right now?
Oh, let's see. I'm in the middle of writing the 8th book in the Nathan K series. It's my action thriller fantasy series. It's like John Wick with immortality.
That's all you got to hear. John Wick with immortality.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me right there.
I write post-apocalyptic fantasy. I write contemporary fantasy. You name it. Go to StuartJaffe.com. There we go.
Stuart
Plug,
Jaffe.
plug, plug.
Yeah. Spell your name so they'll know. And get a book here. Here you go, people. Look at this. This is all you got to do with it.
There you go.
Stuart Jaffe. I don't know if this will be flipped on the thing. It looks like it might
sure
be.
Hope so.
If it's not.
STUARTJAFFE. I'm everywhere online you want to be.
Max Porter series, fantastic, fantastic.
So why don't you tell us about you, Kenny?
Hey,
you make great music.
Well, you know what? If you don't know, I'm Kenny C. I am a musician, a music teacher, and I do play in a couple bands around the area. I have a dance band called Uptown. I fill in with a lot of Journey tribute bands. I've done that before, and I'm kind of a guitar for hire.
Fantastic guitar.
Thank you. That's what I do. Oh, look, it's Mario.
It's Mario.
Hello. Hey, come in. Join us. Live feed here.
Oh, hello.
Oh, this is John Birmingham's feed, the film director. He's just left it here. He had to go pee.
Oh, okay. Well, looks like we're going to be famous. Not that Mario is not already famous, but...
Hey, there you go.
Maybe we can make a better live-action Mario movie.
That's probably gonna happen. Yes. I don't know if it'd be that hard.
I was about to say I don't think it's hard to make a better one.
I suggested to Mario that they do kind of like a Cheech-and-Chong Jug Trip Mario movie, where they drop
Luigi and Mario drop mushrooms.
psilocybin mushrooms and
yeah.
But it wouldn't be any different than the game. The game is pretty much a drug trip.
That's true. Have you seen Mario Warfare on?
No, I have not.
Oh, power! Wait a minute, we gotta get this. There's some stuff going on here. Go one more time. Oh gosh. That's great. That's awesome. Thanks, man.
No problem. Go kick Bowser's butt.
I'm gonna stomp on him and then throw him onto a bomb and say, "So long, Gay Bowser."
That's good stuff. That was good stuff. Oh, that's hilarious, dude. We've had guests on here talking.
Yeah.
Mario, Stuart came on and talked about stuff. You've got a whole bunch of stuff on here. So
okay, I gotta go to it.
Get it, man. Awesome. Hey, we'll see you guys.
Yeah,
Good
later.
to see you, John.
Later, Kenny.
All right, see
Okay,
you, man.
bye.
Bye.
Later, y'all. Okay.
Public school teacher. Dispatcher. This is true. However.
Is this another? This is another one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, now this one's on medium difficulty.
Medium difficulty.
Yeah, on costumes.
On costumes.
Yeah.
These names, man.
Yeah. Now, what was your name again?
My name's John.
John? Okay. John was kind enough to put his up here so we could see.
I thought we had another person to introduce.
No.
Prowl? Yeah.
Well,
Or
we got
Ratchet.
John, but John's.
Prowl.
This is
Prowl.
John. Okay, so John
Yeah.
over here did this one, and then John Birmingham is filming.
Oh, okay.
So, and being like totally
And
cool.
I'm on the panel. supposed to be on the panel.
Yep. Well, there's a chair for you. I didn't know if you wanted to sit or.
Sue Ann and Calvin?
Uh-huh. We don't know where they
I
are.
haven't even seen them.
You made that one right there?
I hope they made it.
This whole thing later
Like, they
on.
weren't on the panels yesterday.
Can you do
either.
commissions? No, I don't.
Did you do it?
It took me 10 months just to
I'm
make
catching them right, like, left and right.
Hey.
Other than that one.
Well,
That was a bad throw.
if you ever decide to.
They play
love to be a carpenter.
over at Hollins. They play on campus all the time.
Are we waiting until more people show up? Okay.
We still got a couple of our panelists that haven't shown. It's right at 11, so we'll give them a few minutes.
Whoa. Panelists? Okay.
Yeah, we have 2 more.
Oh man.
Theoretically.
Yeah, give them the benefit of the doubt that they're actually
I'm
here.
a huge Transformers fan.
Weather being what it is, some people can get in, some people can't.
Yeah, it's all good.
Is it good? Is it good with the position? For your camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 2 that we're missing are actually the 2 that we were missing yesterday. So.
Yeah, that's what she's saying. That's what I was just saying too. I
I
was
had one
like,
of
I don't know
them
if they
that
actually
was
came or not.
convention,
What?
so it went from Bumblebee to car mode. I was like, yeah, most of those are little kids. They got the
So what have you been up to?
This was like, this dude was in his
Too much.
40s. Yeah, like, I was so
Or I should say,
impressed.
what have you been up to that you haven't posted on Facebook?
Awful science infection after working on a TV show. That was fun.
Oh, I'm sorry. You tried using the neti pot?
Well, my sinuses and my asthma is so bad that that makes more steam.
See, the neti pot with the salt that I use that's helped me against, I get bronchitis and pneumonia regularly, even though we get a shot. So I've been using the neti pot. But, okay.
I have so many issues with my sinuses and stuff that adding more moisture up there would probably wreck me.
Hey. Hi.
Have you used the ocean saline spray? Okay. I was gonna say the salt in that might be helpful.
Yeah, no. Should have changed my West Coast so much that, but the
Okay.
West Coast, the weather's better for it.
I guess I gotta sit
Something
through pilots cosplay or something.
Something that you can do,
Related to cosplay.
sage that you have in the spice blend. Okay.
Wouldn't know it. Pull up those shorts and made it.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
make a tea after that a couple times a day because it's a drug agent, and what it'll do is it stops excessive mucus production. So it's really good if you have like phlegmy throat and drainage, and that may help.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Well, I can give you a list of different options, but you know, stuff that's easy to find.
Well, I mean, the inhaler already dried out.
But then you end up having a rebound, and it's miserable.
Okay.
You use,
Well, I guess we're gonna have to start.
We're gonna go ahead and start then because our
that looks good.
I don't feel that cold.
You're as bad as my husband. He can walk around in snow in shorts. Yes, good job.
Oh yeah.
So that's not EDA?
So we're gonna go ahead and start the panel. Welcome to Medium Difficulty, where the panelists talk about different methods and different ways that they construct costumes and some of their favorite supplies and techniques and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves. So I'll start all the way down here at the end.
My name is Matthew Pinnick. I run a theatrical design company called Ribbons and Ribbits. We've been working professionally for about 10 years, but I've been cosplaying since I was about 15. We primarily started in leatherwork, and would still say that that's kind of our specialty and go-to, but we've also branched out into all kinds of other mediums. Thermoplastics, metal, latex, all that kind of stuff. Mostly what I like to call alternative mediums, and that we don't do the typical costuming thing of sewing. It's basically, if you've ever watched any Game of Thrones, you know, House Greyjoy, we do not sew. That's kind of our mantra. Different kind of sew, though. Introduce yourself.
John Birmingham. I'm a filmmaker, and I've done a lot of working with costume designers, people who have designed costumes, or I've designed some of them myself, and I've done some cosplay myself in videos that I did. And I've done some just around conventions and stuff, but I'm in the #1 Ronald McDonald video online. It's got 55 million, it's up to 55 million views. And
some other cosplay things that I filmed. Some other, like Axl Rose, Batman, all these other ones, some more obscure ones that still got a little bit of views and stuff that people really like a lot. And I just done cosplay with my films. I'm a filmmaker, and so I've done cosplay like dressed as Superman. I have designed some of the costumes myself, put together some of the costumes myself, but I'm not nearly as good at creating the costumes as they are. They're experts in creating the costumes. I've gotten more views online doing my cosplay, what they call nowadays cosplay, and historically it was just dressing up, but nowadays with YouTube is more conducive to cosplay just because it's new and people are dressing
Cosplay
as
is
those.
very accessible for most people. They understand it easier.
Yeah, it's the conventions, showing up at the conventions and stuff like that. So I'm not dressed as a character now. And is she dressed? Are you?
No, none of us are.
It's 11 a.m.
I was gonna say,
and I woke up an hour ago.
It ain't happening at this hour. No. Well, I'm Anita Allen. I'm a craftsman level costume designer. I don't really do cosplay. I've done a couple cosplay characters. For those not familiar, cosplay stands for costume play acting. You are dressing and portraying a character. So for me, it's more like I just create random whatever sparks my amusement costumes, and I mostly do what's referred to as draping. So I'm not working with patterns. I kind of look at somebody and figure out how to make the fabrics and materials work on them and then build it on them, or in some cases I build a mock of them and build it on that. And I tend to do a lot of bizarre last minute things. I've been challenged to do a recreation costume, a cosplay of a character, one of the Dirty Pair anime characters. I did that one in about 20 minutes, I think. And that was basically...
Not much on that character.
No, there's not. And all I had to do was basically buy a pair of sweatpants at a thrift store that were the right color, and then some duct tape that was red, and use that to make the costume, because it literally was that quick and that easy and that cheesy. I gotta love them. But a lot of times what I do is quick and dirty and just having fun with it. It does result in there being a lot of things that are weird to work with. I had a character I did, or not really a character, I just came here one day to do panels and was in a blue and gold mood, and I had been out doing some field botany and geology the week before, and I had a large collection of beautiful leaf mica, and so I just glued it on my face because I felt like it. And so I had scaled my face with stones, and I will do stuff like that. A couple years ago I stuck a whole bunch of sand to my face and lichen and went as gargoyle. But as far as difficulty, I take everything as a challenge, and anything that I can get a hold of for materials. I got challenged to make a costume out of the things available in a hotel room without actually damaging it, and so turned a friend of mine into a period queen, and the hotel staff was not happy to see their curtains go by, but I figured if Mackie could do it, I could do it, and so I had a little bit of fun with that. But that's me. I could probably go on forever, but I don't want to. She's the best of the bunch. Well, one of the best of the bunch.
And I'm your moderator, Angela Pritchett. I've been costuming for the last 20 years. I run a whole bunch of different costume contests throughout the East Coast. I've judged at different anime and sci-fi conventions on the East Coast and West Coast. And yeah, I am gonna go ahead and start this off then. So, okay, so it's basically, I'm reading the description straight from the book because I had to go through and read this, and I was like, medium difficulty.
Before I go anywhere, I wanted credits to John over here, who very kindly allowed us to have this. This is not any of ours, and so we'll probably refer to it a couple times, but go ahead.
Okay,
That's a really
so
good piece,
yeah, medium difficulty wasn't very descriptive when I saw this on the schedule, so I was like, what is this? Like, medium difficulty.
What do you consider medium?
Well, first off, I was like, what is this panel? There's no other thing other than the words medium difficulty. It's like, is this a...
I'm feeling attached because I came up with the name, dang it.
Well, costuming, add costuming to the end,
I
mister.
thought it was like, punny, medium difficulty because it's medium hard, but it's like a D&D joke.
But I thought it was like an RPG panel or something. So, but like it says, veteran costumers and cosplayers discuss what mediums to use in different projects, tips, tricks, and which favorites and which ones to avoid. So you as the audience, you're here because you want to learn stuff. What do you want to learn?
Yeah.
EVA foam.
EVA foam.
Anybody have any tips for EVA? I got 2 years ago we had a Halo and gun, but things did not work out.
Okay, sweet. We'll make sure we go over that. Anyone else?
Yeah, elevated platform feet. I need to do a costume that will make me 10 inches taller. How can you do like mobile platform feet that would work?
Wouldn't that be stilts?
Well, technically, yeah.
Well, okay.
And you wouldn't need a whole stilt for 10 inches.
Well, yeah, you can get the stilts for painters.
Yeah,
that kind of equipment's fairly easy to get a hold of.
I've had a friend. He did one of the giant mechas from Final Fantasy, and he used trash cans. He got really sturdy trash cans that he could walk on.
Okay.
For it, and then built around them.
Yeah.
But like he made sure they weren't going to collapse when he got on them and stuff.
Now the bargain basement version of that, go over to Ace Hardware. They have small metal ash cans about this big, and you could invert them and build onto it. It's more of a hoof form, but then you could build a giant shoe onto it to give yourself a good base.
I guess my question there would be, what costume are you doing it for? Are you trying to make a mech?
I'm going to be doing Devastator, Transformers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, okay.
I would also get online. There's so many people that have done, like, if you look at the San Diego Comic-Con videos of people that do, like, the Decepticons and stuff there, because seeing them through the dealer's hall is, like, impressive, because they're very tall. I would get online and see if any of those costumers have made tutorials on how they did their stilts and
Or
stuff.
on Etsy, they have a lot of transformers.
Right. Well, if you go online and find tutorials, it shows you how to make them.
Yeah.
If you go on Etsy, you're buying what someone else has made.
Yeah, but just in case you can't find something specific.
Yeah, worst case scenario, Etsy.
But-
Yeah, my go-to on that one, I would, given the height that he's looking at and the fact that he's going to be moving around, I would be looking for some professional painters and getting the stilts that they walk on, because that's just something you can brace onto your leg and just run.
But a lot of times if you go onto like YouTube and stuff like that, costumers who have made those costumes and had the trial and error already will make videos on how they did that, or they'll have their own webpage making the tutorial on how they did it. And kind of looking at that and even altering it to work better for you, because everybody's different for different costumes. I would just get on and do that research too to make sure that no one has, in fact, already done that. Because if someone's already done all the research for you, do it.
And
Like,
then you
it's
can
great.
just move up forward onto it and make a better version.
And that way, like, you already have it at your fingertips. If you can't find that, then
Yeah, I need something that's flexible, because right now with this costume, it's just basically blocks that I'm standing on, and it's not the easiest. I can't run, right? And my walk speed is barely walking.
Toddlers.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
The trick with that too is to make sure you just don't have perfectly flat surfaces for your platform. Obviously you want it more or less flat because you want to be able to stand, but you want it to be slightly curved this way so that you can sort of
like
roll
marching
your foot.
band shoes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
flex your
yeah.
foot,
My
basically.
husband made a set about this tall, and he actually and has a military boot as the top, and so he figured out where the flex was, where your foot hits, and actually split the foam, not all the way down, but like put a wedge in. So there was a flexibility as he walked, and he was able to walk in those.
Yeah, if you
But they
look
were only about that tall, and I'm not sure that they'll last multiple cons.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the stilt designs and like the Digilegs, I don't know if you're familiar with Digilegs, you probably don't want to drop $600 on a pair of stilts, but if money was not an object and you wanted height riser, Digilegs would be your go-to company for that. But almost all the bases at the end, they're much shorter than a foot like they're not as long as your foot are, and they have this kind of U shape to them. So that when you step, you can kind of roll.
It's kind of like the prosthetics you see the runners using.
Just make sure that when you get them, before you come to the con, you practice at home. Put them on and walk around. 'Cause I always make the joke that if I can vacuum my house in my costume, I'm ready for a con. Like you put your shoes on, you put your costume on.
that way? All right, that's good too.
Well, I mean, like, I'm not saying put full makeup on and this and that, but if you put the costume on and you can actually move around and vacuum and like
I've learned
one or
I
two
can't do
rooms.
that because my cat likes to ride on me.
Well, but that's the one thing because it
But then
needs
small
one.
children at a convention will do it too, so there you go.
Well, I mean, like, and I sew a lot of my costumes, so it's that one thing where if I can do that type of movement, then I'm ready to run around. It's the same as shoes. Like, if I can put those shoes on and I can survive doing that for like 20 or 30 minutes, because that's more rigorous activity than just walking around the hallway, stopping, talking to people. So that makes it so, one, I mean, like, I just had ankle surgery 2 years ago, so I have to make sure if I'm wearing shoes that they're going to be comfortable.
I just imagine like a montage video of you getting the costume on, just dun, 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 dun.
I could have used that.
All right, I'm ready.
Well, I mean, it's just the
Yeah.
one thing
I'm
where.
just now being able to bend and move.
So, but I mean, like, it means that one, your costume's going to be comfortable enough to do that, or you can alter it to make sure. I mean, like, I wouldn't put some of your armor on and go and do that.
I can vacuum in most of my armor.
Well, that's
I mean,
because
you
you're used
have
to
it.
wearing
Yeah,
that.
you have it set up where it's like it bends in the right places, so you're not
It
dying.
moves. My concern would be like I turn around and
some of
catch
your
the
early
lampshade
armor, I
on my
remember.
You know,
shoulder
that's what's
sticking
happened
out.
with me and mine. I have to watch it if I'm walking with the antlers because I got like a low chandelier, but I'll go into a fan in a heartbeat.
That's the thing. I didn't say you have to put the entire
Does it-
thing on. I just said
Oh,
the
yeah.
actual
Oh, no.
costume.
Functional parts.
For
Does
me,
the
I have
fan
to
damage
because I
your-
have to know where that is.
Does the
Because
fan damage your antlers or whatnot?
I've made them so that they're easy to repair.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, okay, so an important thing with costumes, especially when you have projectile costumes, is, you know, things that project out, is that you have, versus ones that fire things, is that you're familiar with where your range is. You know, we as human beings are familiar with where our body is in space and spatial relations. But when you're adding on additional pieces with the costume, you may not be aware of that. So, you know, I use the antlers because I reference that a lot because I wear them often at the convention because they're a comfortable addition for me. But that's something that you need to be familiar with for where is it, because you can't see it. It's not in your peripheral vision. It's like his arm projections or things of that nature or the long skirt. You don't know where it is. And so people are going to get hit by it. Like I've had wings, he turned, nail somebody. I've seen tails take out people. I've seen tails almost take out whole light structures. So it's important to become familiar where it is in relation to you at all times as if it was an actual extension of your body. So the antlers for me, like I have a new car and I have not gotten into that car in those antlers yet. And I'm pretty much thinking, given the headspace in that car, I will not be driving in those. But you know, when I can get into trucks just fine with it. I had used my in-laws truck for a while, and I could get in and out of that with antlers. Got stopped by a lot of hunters. When you have,
Did they take pot shots?
no, but they make jokes. And I actually got into a friend of mine's truck that was smaller than mine and caught and tipped my antler. And again, my antlers are very easy to repair, but I was thinking all trucks are the same. Surprise, they're not.
No, all trucks are the same.
No, they're
Nor they create equal.
no. And I was learning that at the time. And she was like giving me a ride, and so I was like, you know, oh, that wasn't good. But luckily, hot melt fixes most sins.
And so one thing I'll say before we go into talking about armor, like you had suggested that you wanted to hear about, make sure when you have your costume, I actually have a friend that told me a story from San Diego Comic-Con this year. She had giant armor costume with some wings, and she wanted to go in the dealer's hall. And they told her that, well, you can take parts of those off to go in. So make sure when you go to a con and you know how, well, not just that, but make sure you know how crowded the specific, like if you're going to wear like some crazy, like, I mean, we see some of them at Dragon Con, but like if you're going to wear some crazy huge costume at a Dragon Con in the Marriott, then you might want to rethink that because it's just like wall to wall people.
behind a wall, put your back against it, and that's going to be your
And
spot
don't move
for the
for
next
the rest of
4
the
hours.
night.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even longer than that. Like,
Plus, you
it's
gotta get, because
packed.
I've heard at Dragon Con, you've gotta get from point A to point B, and you take an hour to get across.
Right. Yeah, because there's just that many people. So also put that
That's
into
just in street
consideration.
clothes.
Yeah. And so put that into consideration when you're doing your costume. Like here, it's not that big of a deal because it's not as crowded. But depending on where you're going to wear your costume, that's another thing of thinking, oh, I'm making this big elaborate costume out of all these really cool and expensive things. But will this costume be able to handle the amount of people that are going to be around?
And the people that are going to brush up
And
against
the people that
it.
are going to brush up against it, the people are not going to, realize, oh, I just hit you, I'm so sorry. Like, it happens.
Or I can't tell you the number of times I've seen it where someone has got a long outfit and someone has stepped on it, and you know it happens because somebody walking along and all of a sudden they go, and it's because someone has stepped on
I'm
the
a
train.
big fan of putting a button at the top and doing like what they do for wedding dresses.
Yep, and hitch it up.
And hitching the train up when you are walking through areas, because while you won't have that, like you'll have it unbuttoned in photos and everything like
Right.
that, but if you're walking, one, save yourself, and two, no one's gonna be looking down at their feet the whole time
Right.
they're walking.
And this holds true for guys because one of the ones I saw that got choked was a guy with a long sweeping cape. And someone stepped on his cape.
And that's another thing. If you've got a cape, put a piece on it to go around your wrist or something
Yep.
like that. Like
Either that or just lift it up and carry it. I mean, when you're in close confines with people, nobody's going to be getting that beautiful sweeping view, which is why you have the long cape. You want people to see that when it's in motion. When you're close to each other, like
No one's
subway
gonna see it.
close, no one's going to see it. So pick it up over your wrist, or do the tie, whatever it takes, but lift it, because not everybody is going to pay attention, and somebody is going to choke you.
You are not the center of attention for everyone else. So, and while that sounds mean, it's
true.
But and that's the one thing. Like, think about not everyone's going to be paying attention to where your costume is. So you need to be able to make sure that
And
if
if they-
someone bumps you and breaks something, you're going to be really upset, and they're going to be sorry. But if you're in close confines and stuff like
Plus,
that.
if they see something in that dealer room they really want, I mean, you've seen people in here, oh, look at that over there, and they run through the thing.
Oh, and we
They
also
go
have
through
people that
whatever.
don't always understand personal space or stuff like that, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I've literally like put my palm in front of people's faces in anime cons because they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're wearing a such and such shirt. I want to come hug you," and they come running on me. I was like, "No, stop. I'm sorry. What do you want?" So you're gonna get that sometimes because we're at conventions. So
Usually, like, I'm covered with spikes. Please don't touch me.
Yeah.
You will hurt yourself.
But okay,
Children.
so like we had someone asking about EVA foam and armor. So I mean, have you worked with EVA foam that much? I know you work with a lot of leather and plastics and stuff like that.
I guess EVA foam would probably be item 3 on our prioritized materials list. EVA foam's great because it's so cheap, but it's not really the most forgiving material you can work with.
Found that out.
I'd say the first trick in EVA foam is not going with the standard that everybody else kind of has the reflex to go to those floor mats. The floor mats are pretty limited in what they can do because you start out with a certain thickness and that's pretty much all you've got. You're better off, well, certain thickness and certain density. You're better off going to some place like Foam Mart online, where they sell a variety of versions of EVA foam. So you can get different thicknesses. I'll usually get like a 1/4 inch or 5/16 inch thickness because it's thick enough that it looks like a nice heavy metal, but it's not so thick that it starts looking like World of Warcraft armor, where that they're suggesting that you're wearing like 1.5 inch thick steel plate that nobody on the planet could pick up if it was actually made out of steel that thick. So I think it has a little more realism. Also, you can select what density of foam you want. Different densities of foam have different properties when you're working with them. EVA foam that you buy, like the industrial formatting, is the equivalent of what they usually call about L250, which isn't actually a thing. They come in whole numbers, but you select the rating, L200, L300, L400. The higher the number, the denser the actual foam is, which means it has less air in it, which means it holds a little more rigid form. I like to work with about L300 to L400. It makes it look and feel a little bit more like it's like a rigid material. Feels a little bit more like plastic. It's still obviously foam. It's squishy and pliable and everything, but it doesn't have the if you have the less dense foam, it has a tendency to, when you heat it up and you foam and form it, it doesn't hold that form quite as rigidly.
That was our biggest problem with it too. Like we got the floor mats because they told us the floor mats.
Well, they're good for some things, but if you're making like
a helmet,
well, yeah, for a helmet, I would totally not go with the floor mats. But if you were making like bracers or shin guards or something that's simple enough that you're essentially making a tube, or if you're doing the layered effect where you're like stacking them to look like scab plating or whatnot, you can use the floor matting because you're not trying to get real intricate shapes that way. But there's so much curvature and so much forming that goes into a helmet. I'd get really like 1/4 inch or 3/16 even EVA foam, like L400 or so, and cobble it together with that, because you're going to get more purchase and more hold out of your forms that way when you heat it up. Another thing about forming foam, if you've got a form to form it over, you're going to get much more smooth lines and kind of this crisper professional look than if you're heating it up and just kind of punching something in there.
we
trying
had
to get
like
your
the
shape.
templates or whatever. Like I said, we went to Etsy and we had those whole templates for that to do that stuff.
I've got a old 1950s hat press that I use to form helmets on, because it's essentially this wooden block that is head dome shaped, and it's got a little crank and all this kind of complex stuff that makes it so you can force it down into shape, mediums to give it a shape. But a lot of times we'll just take that head block and set it down, and I'll put my pattern pieces on the form and stretch it over. That way you get these nice smooth curvatures rather than kind of, it's semi-rounded, but you can tell where my knuckles or the bowl that I used, the salad bowl that I pushed up in there. When I first started, obviously I didn't have all these things, so I'm like, find me something round so I can shape this thing.
And one thing I've seen used has been, well, for props, but it's taking the Halloween skulls. And you can use a Halloween skull and form on that.
Yep.
And it was like, how do you mass make a lot of skulls quickly? And it was taking old milk jugs and heating them over the good skull, and they'll form down to the good skull, much the same way that EVA foam will do. And so it was like, okay, you can make a bunch of weird looking skulls for projects.
But also remember, like, when you were talking about the mats were a bit more like harder to work with, they're easy and cheap things to practice on, and it's accessible so you can get to it. So if you're wanting to work on armor, if you're saying, hey, I want to make a helmet, but I also have to make like bracers and stuff too, it's an easy way to easily go and buy it and mess around with it, because once you get really good at working with the material, then you can move on to the harder thing, which helmets are harder than bracers and stuff like that. But you also, working on a smaller project makes it so you're learning what the material will do.
Yeah, it's very much like using a mock. When you're making a mock costume, you use the old tablecloths that the hotel lets you have or whatever else, and you do your pattern and you cut it and see how it works and you get familiar with it, and then you use the $20 a yard velvet. So yeah, use the cheap
But
floor
also
mat
know
pieces.
that craft foam is EVA foam. So the really thin craft foam you find at Joann's and stuff, that is also EVA foam.
I made a bodice out of that.
And
Don't do
it's,
that.
And it's, well, that's the one thing. If you're getting stuff like that, that's a good thing to use to make base patterns.
Right, and it
if
also
you're
makes a
gonna-
great fake leather if you want to mount it onto pieces.
So
It's just, I've just been trying, like I said, we want to make some stuff because everything we put on is basically store-bought, and that's getting really expensive.
Well, the EVA foam you would get from, say, Foam Mart, for example. There's other suppliers out there. I just forget them all because I've always used
that's an
Foam
easy
Mart.
name to remember that.
Yeah, it's easy to remember. The less dense it is, if you're getting like the L200 stuff, is way cheaper than the more dense, because it's just more material that goes into the denser stuff.
What about the stuff where, I don't know, based on what I've had with that little Etsy thing around, they tell you to cut it in half. Is that going to damage?
Cut it in half. Like,
cut certain parts in half because they're trying to make so much of, not cut the thing, but.
okay, well, there's certain, I think I might know where you're going with that. There are certain things in forming like a dome, for example, where if you try to do it out on one piece,
You'll
one
get
piece
ripples.
of material,
Mhm.
you're going to get wrinkles because it's having to give and take at the same time. It's having to stretch in some places and it's having to compress in others. And that's really hard for any material, really. Now, if you cut it down the middle, then you've basically divided that in half, how much give and take it's have to do. You've reduced how much a single piece has to move, but then you have to obviously line the seam back up. And the great thing about EVA foam, you're probably going to prime it and paint it, or prime it and sand it and paint it and all that kind of stuff, so you're not going to see the seam anyway. That's why they're so readily safe.
Part.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I'll just end up Mod Podging all the seams and then sanding it all smooth and then primering it and painting it. But there's some mediums you can get away with that and some mediums you can't. Obviously, foam is a great one for it. You can make all your seams invisible if you get pretty good to it, pretty good at it. But one of the things to consider with that too is that when you're making interesting shapes, you don't always want to have a straight cut edge line up to a straight cut edge. A lot of times it's better to cut bevels into them so that they line up more seamlessly. Yep. And so you might want to invest in a bevel cutter, which they make for foam. It's just a little, it's a little track thing that you push and you can set the angle of the blade.
Because we were
so
doing
it'll just cut a bevel for you.
We did it with what, that box cutter knife and a floor.
And
Now-
you know,
now
I've tried
I
to
have
cut
a
bevels with it, but
I have a question for you. I'm looking at his helmet here and really enjoying the structure and everything. And I don't work with EVA foam. I mean, I have with the small stuff, but not the heavy stuff that you're talking about. But you're talking about sanding it. You're talking about using Mod Podge. Wood I'm familiar with. And is it feasible to make putty like you would for woodworking, or are you familiar with doing that? Okay, so you could take the filings from when you sand down the EVA foam, mix it with the Mod Podge, use it as the gap fillers and crack fillers, and then resand it for the rounded edges. That would be possible?
Yeah, you could you could literally sculpt with it. It would be quite a bit of work, especially considering.
Oh Lord, it's on now.
And they do make fillers for it too.
Oh, I like making my own. I'm weird.
Mod Podge by itself will fill a lot of a gap for what you're working with. Most of the time, it's only used when your bevels or your cuts don't line up real well, or you gouged out a piece while you were trying to sand it smooth or whatnot. Because it doesn't take a whole lot if you're using a Dremel tool to like smooth edges or whatnot. It doesn't take much of a slip to leave a nice hefty line in there.
And then you have to make battle scars.
Yeah, I mean, unless if you're trying to scar it up anyway, you might choose not to hide it, but yeah, I think this is that Centra?
It's all Tupperware storage bin plastic in combination
It's very
with,
rigid.
That's probably
mixing
polypropylene
bowls.
then.
Now the actual helmet itself, the base one where you're tapping there in the back.
Yeah, I'm getting the tones.
Yeah, is basically an old like play school police helmet that I found on eBay for $10. I just stripped it down to the bare helmet, and I used aluminum siding rivets to attach other plastics to it.
I didn't want everyone to think that was EVA.
So something to keep in mind about plastics, and especially if you're recycling plastics, is that plastics come in two families. You've got thermoset plastics and you've got thermoplastics. Thermoset plastics get harder when you heat them, and so they're not recyclable. Thermoplastics are the kind that get softer when you heat them, so that you can heat form them
That would
into
probably
whatever.
be the Tupperware container plastics that I've been using, because it actually gets softer and I can work with it, and I put it in whatever shape I want, and then I put it in the fridge and let it cool, and then I'm good. Yeah.
I had one by accident along those lines. My first apartment had a Tupperware pitcher, and I had left it by the stove, and I did not know that this would happen, and it warmed up, and it melted, but not all the way through. So it looked like this big screaming, melting mouth. That went right back in the fridge, and for years we had this pitcher with this face on it. I loved that.
That was
thing.
in your refrigerator?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm married to a horror writer.
The reason why I mentioned that is that if you have a recycling symbol on anything that's plastic, it means you can heat form it into
Okay,
something.
that's
You
good
can
to know.
use it, and you cut it apart and shape it with a hot air gun or something.
Yeah, you can do that with your soda bottles. Soda bottles are fantastic to use along those lines, and you can use a heat gun and just you can also take a soldering a wood burning tool or a soldering iron, and very easily tap and poke holes into all of that. Because I've used those for a number of different
I highly
projects.
suggest you read the rules on all of these tools and
Yes.
practice with them before you decide to do your final
The
work.
safety
though.
disclaimers.
Yes.
Safety disclaimer,
Yes.
please don't hurt yourself. There's a reason why many of us have scars.
Heat guns are dangerous.
I like them, they're warm.
They are. Don't too warm at times.
Well, you can actually buy basically small heat guns called thermoplastic welders. So if you've got these types of thermoplastics, they make little filler rods of the thermoplastic material, and you can stick them together, and you can actually weld. You basically use a little heat gun. It's like a hair dryer, but it comes down to a little tube that's about the size of your pinky, so it has a very direct.
Oh my lord, the
focused
things I could do with that are not appropriate.
They're only about $50.
I'm gonna go back to your question about PVC foam. So one thing is where you were talking about making helmets. You can also make forms of your arm and stuff. So if you're doing like gauntlets or if you're doing like knee braces and stuff, you can do a duct tape foam form of your arm, which basically you put like fabric over your arm and you duct tape it, then you cut it and then fill it. So it's the size of your arm.
Same as
And that
making a
gives
body
you-
mod.
Yeah, it gives you basically a dress form to mold over. So if you're using the heat gun to give it that shape, you have something to work with to put it on and then to like clamp it on.
Right,
gives
and it's
the form
actually
around
form
that.
fitted to your shape because everybody has very unique shapes and proportions. Women can tell you that usually one of the girls is a different size than the other. And so if you get a size such and such bodice, somebody's going to be compressed more than the other. And if you make your own body mock with the duct tape, then everything is fitted exactly right. And when you're working with something like this, where with armor especially, where it needs to be form fitted, you want to have your proportions. Somebody that is more dominant in one arm than the other may have a more built up bicep or forearm.
Than the other.
And so, right, and the outfit will not fit correctly unless it's fitted exactly to that. And so making that mock that she's talking about with the duct tape, fantastic way to make sure that it is proportioned exactly right to you.
And you want to have someone else do that for you.
We had a
There's some
party.
we did. There's some great tutorials online that show you exactly the process to go through. You can make them for your chest, you can make them for your arms, your legs, and stuff like that. And you have
Boots.
something to.
Don't
even get me started. Yeah. And you. And you
I
have
made
a
one at
good-
the con last year.
You have a good thing to use instead of trying to like put it on yourself or like trying to just sit there and make it work without something. So it's one thing where like having those because you can reuse them throughout like over and over and over. So I would totally look up online how to make a dress form, which is what it is, or how to make a duct tape dress form.
For a lot of your forming purposes, like thermoplastics, EVA foam, leather, any of the type things where you're getting a shape off of a form, I've got a fixture store in.
You have so many mannequins at
my
your
house
house.
is littered with mannequins because I need one that's got a 28A.
You
a
walk into his
30B,
house
a
and he literally
32C.
has like leather and everything around these mannequins all through the house, like clamped to them and
I hope to
everything.
God you have some of them in front of the windows because your neighbors.
I think the people. I have a guest room that's actually like the mannequin storage room, more aptly named. But I always
His neighbors aren't that close.
Oh, see, mine are, so there's a lot of bones on the front porch.
I always feel bad when people stay over because I can just envision them like sleeping in the bed in there and opening their eyes and there's like bodies just. all
Yeah, Thomas
over
on
the
episode of
walls.
Doctor Who right
They
there.
don't stay a second night.
No, probably not.
So man, we never had a 2-day party in this place. I wonder why.
So other questions about what you would consider difficult or what you might have
I see a young
problem.
person in our audience who's just sitting there taking it all in. What are you interested in?
You people are weird.
She wants to make some armor.
Awesome. You're looking for leather, metal, what? Any particular?
Mom's like, let's not do metal.
Classic character.
Well, I mean, like, we did go over EVA foam, which is an accessible thing that you can get a hold up and play with. Like I said, start small,
right?
Then work your way up. Once you know the techniques, it makes the harder stuff easier. Like, that's the best, like, advice I think any of us can give you guys.
Are you interested in fantasy or are you interested in realistic combat armor type things? Or all of the above or don't know yet?
Do you just want stuff you can wear to cons and look cool in? There we go.
There you go. Fantasy armor. Have fun.
Yeah, I would just, like I said, get online. There are a lot of well-known cosplayers that also make like book tutorials, like Kamui cosplay and stuff like that you can find online. They're not expensive. They're like $10, I think, for the ebooks. And she actually goes through, she does a YouTube channel too, and she goes through and shows her entire process. And all of her stuff is EVA foam, and it looks really nice. But she goes through the process of how she forms it to herself. She goes through the process of how she like primes it, paints it, all that stuff, how she burns designs into it.
Yep, you can, EVA foam is easy to work with, and the stuff that you can get at, the best place to start in that would be to get the stuff from the craft store, and, because it's really thin, really easy to work with. Look it up online for the tutorials, but you can actually work with it the same way you would tool it like leather, by using a heat tool like an iron. And flattening it.
Under parent supervision.
Yeah, under parent supervision. But it's for some people like my husband under spousal supervision because she should not be left alone.
Well, I don't want mom coming back next year being like, my daughter lost 2 fingers because of you people.
But did she have fun?
So
that doesn't matter.
I lost my house.
That
Your
does not
armor
matter.
was amazing.
Yeah.
You tell it to the cops.
But that's a good way to start is with these craft tutorials and play with it and see, you know, how crazy can you get with something that's cheap and easy to work with, and then as the fantasy ideas start popping up in your head, you can evolve it into more things.
I think that's why the
And
foam
also-
became so popular, is just because not only is it itself inexpensive, but the tools required to work with
Because
it.
foam, like you see it, like it used to be cardboard armor, and now it's all
Yeah.
foam armor because it's basically the same
Carpet
price.
armor.
Oh my god, carpet armor. No,
Do you
it's
remember
so
that?
Itchy.
Oh, well, we used to go and steal go behind the carpet stores and steal the old carpet padding. And we're talking used, disgusting carpet padding, or sometimes if you were lucky, you got the good stuff. And we would use that. And so you would build your armor out of it, and then you would cover that with liquid latex or other things as a primer, because there wasn't a primer on the market. Yeah, oh, it was disgusting and all get out, but you know.
You looked amazing.
I don't know if it looked amazing. It smelled fantastic if you were doing a barbarian.
I don't know. If you're using liquid latex, you smell like dead fish.
Usually, yes.
So,
What does a barbarian smell like? Dead fish and rotten carpet.
there you go.
Mom.
I don't do costumes, but I've heard this mentioned at other conventions. When you're putting your costume together, you need to consider how you're going to use the restroom.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a full body glove in a little while as a red Power Ranger with a dancer's belt. Bathroom time is not easy.
You go before. You still
So don't
hydrate.
drink
but-
anything for the next 6 hours.
You still have to hydrate. Don't tell him not to hydrate.
No, it wasn't
Worst
that
case
that got
worst case scenario is in the crotch area, because
Yeah.
not everybody's going to have a full view of your crotch at all times.
dancer's
You
belt.
can. I don't know about a dancer's belt.
That's what I'm using.
But I was going to suggest the possibility of snaps.
That's what I have on my store.
And yeah, it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but for what it's worth, sanitary products for ladies can provide sufficient padding to protect the boys. This is from working at a drag club occasionally, but it will help cradle anatomy, and so the snaps will not grab where they shouldn't.
Well, most hentai suits aren't made with that, so that's
No.
the one thing.
I do have one other question too. I have another costume that I'm currently working on for the Red Space Ranger, and apparently I got the whole costume ready, feet are a little bit messed up or whatnot. I've got to figure out a way to get better boots for it. But I ordered like a helmet or whatnot. I basically gave up on making a lot of my own stuff, but just getting some stuff right done. Do y'all know anything about making the helmets more realistic for that stuff?
Like realistic how?
Like finished, would you take a motorcycle helmet and try to adjust it that way?
Well, the
Or-
Power Rangers helmets aren't motorcycle helmets, though.
They are not.
So
It's
the
the closest
motorcycle
thing
helmets
to
are too
oversized.
bulky for
Right.
a Power Rangers helmet. Most of those helmets were made with fiberglass and resin, and they are miserable because I used to make them. And fiberglass is a horrible, horrible thing to work with because it
So that's
gets
not me.
shards.
Gotcha.
It gets shards and everything because the way a lot of those are made is they are sculpted, then they are made from a mold, and then they do the fiberglass and the resin in there, and then they Bondo and they sand, and like it's some hard old school like stuff that those Japanese people are doing to make the Sentai stuff.
I haven't seen those specific helmets that you're talking about, but I can tell you that if you're trying to make a helmet where it's not looking like it's a abnormally large helmet, a base for that, oftentimes I will use baseball helmets, but I will use children's baseball helmets and take the padding out of the inside. So once you have, that will actually make it fit because it doesn't have all that padding in there, but it's also really close to your head, so it hasn't increased the size of your head.
You can just shape down.
But you still have a lot of work to do to it
Completely
at that
finished
point.
helmet, or are you buying a kit? Because they do sell kits.
I bought a completely finished helmet, and I was waiting for it. I made payments. It was $400. Okay, I thought I did this one. Dude said it was called Mighty Morphin Props. That site is no longer up now, so I think my money just got taken. And I cannot find the dude. I've sent him emails.
So
It's not coming in there. I thought of that, or I might just have to get someone to commission.
Well, I think the baseball helmet's a great way to do it. I mean, we used to take
The young
football and soccer armor and strip it down and use it as the base to put armor over top of, just for mobility. So you might be able to find something along those lines. Hockey helmet.
Yeah, it just depends on how much of a head start you need. I mean, that gives you the dome shape if you use a baseball helmet, which is kind of one of the harder parts. But all that detailing stuff you're going to have on the front. Obviously, like I said, I haven't seen the specific helmet you're thinking about, but imagining one of their standard helmets, I can think of the amount of work that would go into just the facial portion of that.
What I want to do is actually pretty. It's not that difficult.
Google it.
Yeah, the red Space Ranger. It looks like a motorcycle helmet, like standard motorcycle helmet. It just has one thing in the middle, and it's very small.
So I will say, because I used to do a lot of Super Sentai cosplays, which is Power Rangers.
Yeah,
which is
that's the Japanese
version.
Power Rangers.
Back in the day, and we're talking like Bokinger day, the way we would do, because there used to be a great forum for just Power Ranger and Super Sentai costumers. A lot of it was bought, a lot of the helmets were bought on eBay, because one, eBay is owned by the PayPal.
Yeah.
And so, one, it's harder to get scammed on eBay now because if your stuff doesn't get there within like 30 days, you can issue a refund. They still have sellers that do Power Ranger helmets on there, or a lot of people, if you find the right company, like a reputable company,
And
they sell kits.
He had kits and stuff like that. Like I know this panel is not how not to get scammed by the internet, but I had a lot of stuff. It looked so good, and I was gonna get. She wants to do the Pink Ranger at some point, the original one, and we were gonna get that. I had the props, I had everything, but that helmet. I just feel like.
I'm looking at the helmet right now,
At least
and
it's more simple than some of the other
basically,
ones.
That's what I'm saying. That one looks just like a motorcycle helmet you can get on there. Sorry, what were you saying?
Well, the way the helmets are, they're
roller
two
derby.
pieces.
And they've modified our helmets now to be more protective of our head, and I actually pulled it up just now. It kind of looks like a helmet. Some of them are more expensive than others, but they're designed to protect your head. That's why they're a little expensive. That's kind of what they look
That
like.
does look a lot like it, yes. I'd have to look at. I think I'm just gonna get someone to come in because I
And they
don't
make
have
them with the
time.
guards too.
Because the way that their helmets are done, they're two pieces. They generally they have the one little gear at the top, and they clip open on the sides.
That's what I'm saying. I was just wondering if y'all.
I
had
would,
any-
like I said, I would check eBay
Okay.
because
I mean,
a lot of
several
times
for sale
they,
on here already.
a lot of times they always have. You have to search for the specific one you want.
Yeah.
But like that was a to go, that was a go to back in the day. It was always eBay because some of these sellers that would make kits were in China, they were in Japan, they'd sell here. And when you were saying $400, I was looking on there. They had ones for like 150, 200.
Really?
So.
But is that
But
just
like
the
I said,
cast,
go
though?
through and look at their rating, look at their star rating and all of that too.
and get the cops involved and let them know that this guy it's referred to as obtaining money under false pretense.
To be fair, I don't know. It could be something that the site is just down and they're not able to get up there. And
Let's hope.
I can see not wanting to answer the dude who's bothering you about getting your site or whatever. I understand if he gives me like a send back and
I've
stuff.
been on that end. Like, hey, how's it coming? How's it coming? How's it coming? I'm gonna charge you extra
Go
$20
ahead.
if I have to keep answering these emails.
We have to get back on topic because we have like 2 or 3 minutes
I
left.
apologize for
So
that.
let's answer her question.
But it's an important thing for people that are buying to know.
Yep.
Any
All right.
others?
No, but if he
Please
gave you a
forgive me,
deadline,
I
you
can
know,
barely
that's
talk
different.
still. I'm just now getting my voice clearly back. I wear a lot of wigs as a cosplayer. I'm trying to find a more comfortable way to wear my wigs.
Are
That
you wearing
way-
a wig cap?
Yeah, I have a wig cap underneath, but I still get these headaches. Is there a way? Because I've rearranged my hair all kinds of ways.
Okay.
I've reclipped it.
How long is your hair? I have chronic migraines and I have the same issue.
And I can't
My
wear
hair's
them.
about down.
Okay, yeah, your hair's about. So have you tried braiding your hair and putting it up in?
I don't know how to braid.
Okay,
Okay.
well, learn how to braid. This will help you so much. I
Okay.
promise. Do braided pigtails, just really loose braided pigtails,
Okay.
and try putting them up in that. Just kind of loosely putting it up in your wig cap. What type of wig cap are you using?
The netted.
The netted ones? Okay, great. See if you can find the ones that have the hole in them.
Yeah, the one I have right now has. a
That's the hole in it? Okay. Those are probably the lightest ones you're gonna find, and they're
Okay.
gonna be the easiest ones to keep your hair up in.
Okay.
If you need to, stretch it a little bit more because you have the hair to pin it in.
Okay.
So, because it might just be, it's a little bit too tight. But
Yeah,
also,
it feels really tight.
know
up
to
there.
give yourself breaks in the middle of the day. If you're gonna wear a costume for 8 hours, you're not used to keeping something on your head that tight.
Right.
And so, in the middle of the day, if you need to, go back to your room, drink some water, stay hydrated. That might also be a reason you're getting headaches. Make sure you're staying hydrated.
So that double
She
layer
has
of
a
hair is
bad
gonna
trouble
cause.
of hydrating.
Yeah.
under
It's gonna
the
cause
best
for-
circumstances.
And we'll see,
Oh,
right now you're
dehydration.
wearing all these layers, your body's hot, and your body is like, what's going on? And that's what's giving you the headaches.
Okay.
So make sure you're staying hydrated. Make sure that you eat a little bit of something, even if it's just like a piece of chocolate to help keep your blood sugar up, because that'll also cause headaches. But also, if you're in a costume, like I said, for 6 to 8 hours, after about 3 or 4 hours, go back to your room and just take the wig off.
Yeah, give yourself
and
a
give
break.
your head a little bit of a break.
Oh,
Take
we
it
live-
off, have your
And-
water,
but
have your
part of
piece
it-
of chocolate,
part of it will be
freshen
just-
things up.
Part of it will
Think
be
of it.
just staying hydrated and stuff like that, because that'll help your body kind of be like that. And then just keep, I'm a big fan of Excedrin migraine.
Okay.
As someone with chronic migraines, just pop one if you start feeling like you're gonna get one, and just drink some water, and that should help, because that'll kind of give
Yep.
your body a little bit of medicine to fight it.
Yeah, if you have aura, watch for your triggers and watch for the things that are warning you that one's coming. And even if you don't feel the pain, take your medicine beforehand. Because I'm on the prescription level for mine, and if I start getting the light, it's like
The
I swear to-
The light.
for me,
Yeah, I know what
if
you're
you,
saying.
okay, for me, I swear it is just like that circle that fills up when you're waiting
Yeah.
for something to load. And if that circle makes it all the way around, boom! So,
I
as soon
always
as,
put like 12-day Advil in before I put my wigs on all the
Yep.
time.
But
So
I would also check, because if that's not working,
Uh-huh.
see if there's another, like I said, Excedrin migraine's the only one that works for me. I would mess around with Advil, Tylenol. Like Tylenol doesn't work for me at all.
right,
So
Yeah,
I would kind of see and check, because like Excedrin I use because one, it has acetaminophen and caffeine in it,
Gotcha.
and that helps with the
Yeah.
migraines.
Yeah.
So, or with headaches in general. So I would just mess around with that too, because like I said, you're not used to wearing wigs all the time. Your
No.
body's like, what are you doing? What is this?
what is
thing?
this thing on my
But
head?
also, like I said, braiding, loose braids.
Loose braids.
Because if you
Yep.
do tight, that's putting more pressure on your head, and that's gonna hurt. So
Yep.
if you do the braids, loose braids, and then just throw them up under there, and it'll also make your life easier with wearing that wig.
See, today's a trigger day for me, so I have to have my hair down. If I have it pulled back, that's gonna cause stimulation that might cause the migraine. And I can take this off, but, you know, I'm pulling extra shifts at work, and not having enough sleep is a trigger for me. So, plan your outfit around your triggers, and it could be sound being a trigger. So, since you've got the wig, you have the possibility of using earplugs, and just get the ones that are not, like, I wear 32s half the time, but get something that's like in a 16 or whatever, so it actually lets a lot of the ambient noise in. Nobody's gonna notice that you're wearing them. And that way you can be comfortable to cut down the amount of sound stimulation which will cut down the amount of stimulation overall migraine trigger.
A lot of people do that for Dragon Con.
Oh, yeah.
In the Marriott.
Oh,
they
you
get
can get
noise
these
so
gorgeous
high.
Bluetooth ones now that look like cyber designs.
Okay,
That are
guys.
fantastic.
We have to finish up
Yep.
because we are done. Thank you
All
guys
right.
so much for coming out.
Thank you. All right, I've had like 3 phone calls.
I have some cards.
Got some of my booth.
Thank you
I'll
all for
take a
your
look.
advice, ladies. I appreciate that. Oh yeah. No, I would just pop some Excedrin in there, and
I've got my emergency kit right in there.
because it's like half ones are great, but my heavy ones is like, oh hold on. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like also
the
you're
weight,
adding
too.
extra weight onto your neck and stuff too. And I feel it.
And it's the compression.
I just undid my blue thing to hold my wig on.
I never see the thing to tighten. I always loosen those so I have a little bit more. Just pop the bobby pins in like this. Yeah. And that keeps it in place for me.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine that she has the hair wave issue severely, and so she's actually changed her entire style. She's what they call a ponytail goth, but she has the front locks, she has everything shaved on the side, she can wear her hair down and no one knows it. So,
That's all right. Thank you.
Have fun.
Thank you.
So what's it look like?
Monster people, I think.
And so,
Ow.
I think like.
Oh, there you are. Hey, how you doing? Hey, Batman. Here, let's go to Batman. How you doing, Batman? Hey.
Chart, we just rotate it, so who gets to see who gets to shower.
He's gonna read Batman's palm. Some people stopped watching after that last panel. I didn't say anything in the whole freaking. I hardly said anything in the whole time. Yeah.
Holy moly, I love it.
Long road.
So
Nice to move on to the next stage, the next phase.
Okay, I'm holding.
That's amazing.
So is this your only costume, or are you just Mr. Batman, or do you have other personas? Is this your only persona, or do you have other? Okay. Are you in films, or is this more your kind of thing that you like to do?
We were at a film festival yesterday, and we had a film play last night that I produced. And, yeah, so I'm mostly a filmmaker and an actor.
Oh.
So, but it's just stuff I like to do for fun.
Oh. Are you going to have more of that tonight?
Not tonight, no. We only have one. But being part of Grand Theater Film Lab, that's a great program in high school. Grand Theater.
Oh, Grand Theater.
Yep. They let high school students, We have a film festival at the end of the school year.
This guy's a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
You got a card?
Huh?
You got a card?
I do not have a card.
Here's mine.
All right, thank you.
And on there is, I have a live chat every evening at 7 p.m.
All right, cool. I'll check it out.
Any old time. Later, Batman. This is great. I try to get young adults and teenagers into something to do. So if you could email me how to get a hold of you, I'd love to get those folks involved with you.
You want me to, like, for tips or something?
Yeah, whatever you got to
Whoa, I remember those.
Everyone line up. I'm an inside joke. Robert. I was going to do the who's on first, what's on second.
You know, I haven't done that since high school.
I was going for that. So let's see your palm. Behind your right.
My what?
Your palm. Wow. You're an avatar.
Oh, am I?
Yeah. You're from someplace else. You're like one of those tall blue guys. Very much the artist. Everything you do is that's why you make a good artist. What kind of that's an art.
Probably Robert Ricardo signing.
Oh, okay.
If I would to get
Get back to work. Have fun storming sick bags.
There you go.
I am supposed to be the librarian of the Jedi Library. Yes, I'm a Jedi master.
Is it okay if you're on camera? Do you want to be? Okay.
I can stand up.
To your palm,
My
girlfriend.
palm.
Put it up like that. Well, you are. Oh man, you are a warrior. You can kick butt.
Of course, you have a lightsaber.
Well, you don't even need that.
No.
Those little lightning bolts come out of your fingers.
I use the Force.
But you're very sweet. And you're like one of those people who are just in a comedy and there's a heckler out there. You say something that like their heart falls apart and you're just like your girl who drops the mic.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you.
Right?
I don't know.
Put the
Maybe
palm
it's
back
true. I don't think so.
We'll be happy to sell you anyway. We'll fix it. We'll make a great sacrifice in everybody costs.
Great.
Hi.
Hi.
You want to be on the video?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
What do I need to do?
It's filming. You can
Okay.
say, hey, this is my
Hello, welcome to Mysticon. We are having a blast here. From the Fairy Kingdom, I greet you and say hello.
The Fairy Kingdom?
Yeah, Fairy
Cool.
Kingdom.
That's nice.
All right.
I like your cosplay outfit.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks amazing. The color schemes are
Wild
really
and fabulous,
amazing,
aren't they?
Yeah, they blend in actually amazingly well.
Yeah, I found this jacket and I was like, that is just the coolest thing ever.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it blue, purple?
Mostly it's
green,
blue and purple,
and
but
white?
yeah, then you've got this kind of green and this yellow. And
Cool. That's awesome.
All right.
The fairy lady, or fairy queen.
I
Fairy-
like that. She has a crown.
Okay. Wow, cool. Okay, well, it's on video. If you look up Mysticon, Road, Virginia on,
Yeah.
on YouTube, it'll be one of the videos.
Great.
Probably, most likely.
Okay. I have to ask, are you cosplaying someone or is that just a colourful look?
It's just showing up for the convention looking a little different, and
It looks
could be a
different.
cosplay. Don't take it up.
You can always tell everyone
I'm an
what cosplay is
exercising
Jason
rock
Momoa with his
star.
shirt.
I'm an exercising rock star who has to use the bathroom. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, there's a character in a movie that has been established that I'm cosplaying as that person in my own movie in real life though.